Rain hammered the cathedral steps while Vivian Mercer sat motionless in her destroyed wedding gown, mascara bleeding down her face like war paint. Hours ago, she was supposed to marry Miami's golden boy. Now she knew the truth. Her fiancé had been sleeping with her sister for months, and both families expected her to smile through it anyway for a goddamn business merger. Then a black Rolls-Royce pulled up, and Lucien Vale stepped out. The most feared mafia boss in Miami, the man whose name made grown criminals whisper. He draped his coat over her shaking shoulders and asked one quiet question. Who did this to you? That's when everything exploded. Drop a like, comment what city you're watching from, and let me see how far this story travels. You won't believe where this goes. The rain didn't care that Vivian's life had just detonated. It kept coming down in cold sheets, soaking through $15,000 of Italian lace and turning the cathedral steps into a river of runoff and ruined dreams. Vivian Mercer sat there anyway, knees pulled to her chest, watching her engagement ring catch fragments of neon light from the street below. 3 hours ago, she'd been standing in a dressing room surrounded by bridesmaids who wouldn't meet her eyes. That should have been the first warning. The second was her younger sister Cassidy slipping out early, claiming she felt sick. The third was finding them together in the coat check room. Damian Torres, her fiancé, with his hands buried in Cassidy's hair and his mouth on her neck. Vivian had stood there, frozen, watching her entire future collapse into a singular image she'd never be able to burn out of her brain. When Damian finally noticed her, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He'd just straightened his tie, smirked, and said, "Don't be dramatic, Viv. We'll talk after the ceremony." Like she was the one being unreasonable. Like betrayal was just another item on the wedding checklist. She'd run, grabbed the dress, ignored the shouting behind her, and sprinted through the reception hall in heels that weren't made for escape. Nobody followed. That hurt worse than anything, knowing that not a single person in that building cared enough to chase her down. So now she sat alone on cold marble, dress ruined, heart shredded, while Miami's downtown chaos rolled past her like she didn't exist. A car door slammed. Vivian didn't look up, probably just another rideshare dropping off someone with an actual future. She pulled the soaked lace tighter around her shoulders and tried to remember how to breathe without crying. Footsteps approached. Expensive shoes on wet pavement. Close. Too close. "You're going to catch pneumonia out here." The voice was low, controlled, with an edge that suggested whoever owned it wasn't used to being ignored. Vivian still didn't look up. She was done taking orders from men in expensive suits. "I'm fine," she said flatly. "You're sitting in a wedding dress in a thunderstorm. That's the opposite of fine." "Then I'm the opposite of fine. Go away." Silence. The rain kept drumming. The footsteps didn't retreat. Finally, Vivian lifted her head. The man standing 3 feet away looked like he'd been carved from shadows and bad decisions. Tall, lean, dark hair slicked back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled violence. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, and his eyes, dark, unreadable, dangerous, studied her with the kind of focus that made her spine straighten instinctively. Lucien Vale. Oh, Christ. Vivian recognized him immediately. Everyone in Miami knew that face, even if most people were smart enough to avoid it. Lucien Vale ran half the city's underworld with the kind of cold precision that made other criminals look like amateurs. Korean-American, ruthlessly intelligent, and connected to everything from the docks to the downtown high-rises. Damian had mentioned him exactly twice during their engagement, both times in the tone people use when discussing sharks or live grenades. Dangerous business, getting involved with Vale, man's got no mercy. And now he was standing in front of her, holding an umbrella, and looking at her like she was a problem he intended to solve. "You're Vivian Mercer," he said, not a question. "Was," she corrected bitterly. "Pretty sure I just traded that name in for something worse." Lucien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. He stepped closer, angling the umbrella to cover them both, and the rain's assault softened to a muted hiss. "What happened?" "You don't want to know?" I asked. Vivian laughed, sharp and humorless. "Groom's been screwing my sister. Families want me to marry him anyway. Merger's more important than my dignity, apparently." She looked up at him, mascara streaked and furious. Happy? That the kind of tragedy you were hoping for? Lucian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, deadlier. Damien Torres. It wasn't a question. Of course he knew. Men like Lucian Vale made it their business to know everything. Yeah, Vivian said. Are you two friends? No. The word came out like a blade. We're not. He reached into his jacket. Vivian tensed instinctively, but he just pulled out a coat, expensive, black, still warm from body heat, and draped it over her shoulders without asking permission. The fabric smelled like cedar and something darker, something that suggested boardrooms and bloodshed. You can't stay out here, Lucian said. I don't have anywhere else to go. That was the truth, raw and humiliating. Her family would force her back to Damien. Her friends were Damien's friends. Her apartment was in a building Damien's father owned. Every corner of her life had been bought, sold, or controlled by people who saw her as leverage. Lucian studied her for a long moment. Then he did something Vivian didn't expect. He offered his hand. Yes, you do, Ban. The Rolls-Royce was quiet enough to make Vivian's breathing sound too loud. Leather seats, tinted windows, and a partition separating them from the driver who hadn't looked at her once. Vivian sat rigid against the door, Lucian's coat still wrapped around her shoulders, watching Miami's glittering skyline slide past. This was insane. She just climbed into a car with one of the most dangerous men in Florida because he'd offered her shelter and she'd been too broken to refuse. Every true crime documentary she'd ever watched was screaming warnings inside her skull. But Damien's voice was louder. Don't be dramatic, Viv. Screw dramatic. She was going to be absolutely unhinged. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. Lucian glanced at her. In the dim interior light, his features looked softer, almost human. Almost. My home, he said simply. The Vale Estate, Biscayne Bay. Vivian's stomach dropped. You're serious? You said you had nowhere to go. So you're just, what, adopting strays now? His mouth twitched. It might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with a man whose reputation was built on calculated brutality. Call it what you want, Lucienne said. But nobody touches what's mine, and as of right now, you're under my protection. I don't belong to you. No, he agreed quietly. You don't belong to anyone. That's the point. The words landed harder than Vivian expected. She turned back to the window, throat tight, and watched the city blur into streaks of gold and red. The Vale Estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress wrapped in glass and steel, perched on the edge of Biscayne Bay like a monument to power. Floodlights illuminated manicured lawns and palm trees swaying in the storm wind. Armed security moved through the shadows with the efficiency of soldiers. Vivian's heels clicked against marble as Lucian led her through the front entrance. Inside was all clean lines and dark elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, modern furniture that looked like it cost more than her college tuition, and the kind of silence that only came from wealth and control. A woman appeared from a hallway, older, Korean, with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. She looked at Vivian's ruined dress, then at Lucian, and said something in rapid Korean that sounded like a reprimand. Lucian replied in the same language, calm and unbothered. The woman sighed, then switched to English. You bring home strays now? Mrs. Kwan, Lucian said evenly. This is Vivian. She'll be staying here. Guest suite, second floor. Make sure she has everything she needs. Mrs. Kwan's gaze softened slightly when she looked at Vivian again. You look half drowned, girl. Come on, let's get you warm before you freeze to death in that ridiculous dress. Vivian followed numbly, aware of Lucian's eyes tracking her across the foyer. At the staircase, she paused and looked back. Why are you doing this? Lucian stood in the center of the massive room, hands in his pockets, backlit by lightning flashing over the bay. When he answered, his voice carried clearly across the space. Because Damien Torres destroyed my family 3 years ago, and I've been waiting for the right moment to return the favor. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Vivian standing on the stairs with the truth settling over her like ice water. She wasn't a guest, she was a weapon. But the guest suite was bigger than Vivian's entire apartment. King bed, walk-in closet, marble bathroom with a shower that had more jets than a car wash. Mrs. Kwan had left clothes on the bed, soft pants, a cashmere sweater, everything in exactly Vivian's size. That should have been creepy. Instead, it just felt efficient. Vivian peeled off the ruined wedding dress and left it in a wet heap on the bathroom floor. Under the scalding shower spray, she scrubbed mascara and hairspray and the feeling of Damien's hands off her skin until the water ran clear and her body finally stopped shaking. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel that was somehow heated, her phone was buzzing on the nightstand. 17 missed calls, 32 texts, all from the same numbers. Damien, where the hell are you? Damien, this is childish. Damien, we need to talk. Her father, Vivian Marie Mercer. You call me immediately. Cassidy, I'm sorry. Okay, it just happened. Her mother, the merger depends on this wedding. Come home. Vivian deleted everything without reading the rest. Then she blocked all of them and threw the phone onto the bed like it was radioactive. A knock on the door made her jump. It's me, Mrs. Kwan's voice called. I brought food. You look like you haven't eaten in days. Vivian opened the door. Mrs. Kwan swept in with a tray containing soup, bread, and tea that smelled like comfort and warmth. She set it on the desk and turned to study Vivian with the practiced eye of someone who'd raised children. Better, she declared. Now you look human again. Sit. Eat. Vivian sat. The soup was perfect, rich, savory, exactly what her hollowed-out stomach needed. She ate mechanically while Mrs. Kwan fussed with the room temperature and pulled the curtains against the storm. How long have you worked for him? Vivian asked between bites. 23 years, since Lucien was 16 and stupid. Is he still stupid? Mrs. Kwan smiled. No, now he's dangerous. But he's a good man underneath all that. She paused. Most of the time. He said Damien destroyed his family. The warmth left Mrs. Kwan's expression instantly. That's not my story to tell, but yes. Damien Torres is poison. And if Lucien's brought you here, it's because he sees an opportunity. She fixed Vivian with a hard look. Question is, are you going to let yourself be used, or are you going to use him right back? Vivian stared into her soup. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Nobody does, girl. But you're here. That's already a choice. Mrs. Kwan moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Lucien doesn't let people inside these walls unless he trusts them. Whatever he told you about revenge, that's only part of it. What's the other part? Mrs. Kwan smiled sadly. You'll have to ask him yourself. What? Vivian couldn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling while the storm raged outside and her brain replayed the last 12 hours on an endless loop. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Cassidy's guilty face. Damien's smirk, her father's cold disappointment. At 2 a.m, she gave up and pulled on the cashmere sweater. The house was silent as she slipped into the hallway, bare feet soundless on polished wood. She had no destination in mind, just needed to move, to think, to breathe in a space that wasn't suffocating. She found Lucien on the terrace. He stood at the glass railing, looking out over the bay with a crystal tumbler in one hand and the kind of stillness that suggested he'd been there for hours. He didn't turn when Vivian approached, but his shoulders shifted slightly, acknowledgement without invitation. Can't sleep? His voice was rougher now, stripped of its earlier control. Can you? Vivian countered. Rarely. She joined him at the railing. Below, the bay churned black and violent, reflecting the city lights like broken stars. The storm was moving east, leaving behind the electric smell of ozone and possibility. Tell me about Damien, Vivian said quietly. Tell me what he did. Lucien was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he took a drink and started talking. 3 years ago, my younger brother Ethan was working construction. Legitimate business, good contracts, building half the waterfront developments in Miami. Then the feds came sniffing around, asking questions about drug trafficking through the construction sites. Vivian's stomach sank. She already knew where this was going. Someone had planted evidence, Lucien continued, voice flat and deadly. Falsified shipping manifests, doctored communications, Everything needed to make Ethan look guilty. He lost his license, lost his contracts, nearly lost his freedom. By the time we proved it was a setup, Damian Torres had already swooped in and claimed every single project. Jesus, Vivian breathed. Ethan never recovered. He's been in and out of therapy for years, can't hold a job, barely leaves his apartment. Damian didn't just steal his business, he stole his future. Lucian turned to look at her, and the rage in his eyes was so controlled it was terrifying. And your family brokered the deal. Your father negotiated the handover. They knew exactly what Damian had done, and they rewarded him for it. Vivian felt sick. I didn't know. I know you didn't. His expression softened fractionally. You were just the prize, the final piece to legitimize Damian's empire. I'm not a prize, Vivian said sharply. I'm not a piece. I'm a person who just had her entire life ripped apart. I know, Lucian said again, quieter this time. That's why you're here. The air between them felt charged, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with crime or revenge. Vivian should have been terrified, should have been running. But standing there in the dark with Miami spread out below them like a battlefield, all she felt was clarity. So what now? She asked. You use me to destroy Damian? Make him look weak for losing control of his fiancée? That was the plan. Lucian set his glass on the railing. Before I actually met you. And now? He looked at her like she was a problem he couldn't solve. Like she'd walked into his carefully constructed world and immediately blown it apart. Now I don't know, he admitted. But you're safe here, for as long as you want to stay. Vivian laughed bitterly. Safe? In the house of Miami's most dangerous crime boss. Safer than anywhere Damian can reach you. That was probably true. Vivian leaned against the railing, feeling the cold glass against her palms, and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do next. Go back to her family? Impossible. Face Damian? Never. Start over somewhere new? With what money? What connections? I don't have anything, she said quietly. No job, no money, no plan. I've been living in Damian's world for so long I forgot how to exist outside it. Then don't go back, Lucian said simply. Stay. Figure it out from here. And what do I owe you? His jaw tightened. Nothing. I'm not Damian. I don't collect debts from people who are already broken. The words hit harder than Vivian expected. She turned to face him fully, this dangerous man who'd pulled her out of the rain and given her shelter without asking for anything in return. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like someone who'd been fighting for so long he'd forgotten what peace felt like. Why did you really stop? Vivian asked. On the cathedral steps. You could have just kept driving. Lucian held her gaze. Because I know what it's like to be abandoned by people who are supposed to protect you, and I'm done watching it happen. Something cracked open in Vivian's chest, something that had been locked down tight since she'd found Damian with Cassidy. Before she could stop herself, she reached out and touched Lucien's hand where it rested on the railing. His fingers tensed, but he didn't pull away. Thank you, Vivian whispered, for stopping. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm was moving on, leaving behind a city washed clean and glittering with false promises. But here on this terrace, with Lucien's hand warm under hers and the bay stretching dark and infinite before them, Vivian felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. And the terrifying certainty that whatever happened next was going to change everything. Yet, morning came too bright and too fast. Vivian woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere downstairs. For one confused moment, she thought she was still in her old apartment, that yesterday had been a nightmare, that she'd wake up and everything would be... Then she saw the cashmere sweater draped over a chair that cost more than her monthly rent, and reality crashed back. She was in Lucian Vale's house. Damian Torres was probably losing his mind, and Vivian had absolutely no idea what to do next. She found Mrs. Kwan in the kitchen, a massive space of stainless steel and marble that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. The older woman was chopping vegetables with the efficiency of a surgeon, while a younger man sat at the island drinking coffee and scrolling through his phone. He looked up when Vivian entered. Late 20s, Korean, with Lucian's sharp features and none of his control. His expression flickered through several emotions before landing on wary curiosity. "So you're the runaway bride," he said. "Ethan," Mrs. Kwan said sharply. "Manners." "What?" "I'm just observing facts," but his tone softened slightly. "I'm Ethan, Lucien's brother, the one Damien Torres tried to destroy." Vivian's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Yeah, nobody ever knows." Ethan set his phone down. "That's kind of Damien's specialty. Destroying people quietly while everyone else is looking the other way." Mrs. Kwan slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of Vivian. "Eat. You're too thin." Vivian sat, mostly because her legs felt shaky. Ethan studied her with an expression that was equal parts sympathy and suspicion. "So what's the play here?" he asked. "You staying for revenge, protection, true love?" The last part dripped with sarcasm. "Ethan," Mrs. Kwan warned, "I'm just trying to figure out if she's going to break my brother's heart or get him killed. Both seem equally likely at this point." "I'm not trying to do either," Vivian said quietly. "I'm just trying to survive." Something in Ethan's expression shifted. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay, I get that." He stood, grabbing his coffee. "For what it's worth, Lucian's scary as hell, but he's loyal. If he said you're safe here, you're safe here. Nobody in Miami's stupid enough to cross him. Except Damien. Especially not Damien. Not anymore." Ethan smiled, sharp and dangerous. "My brother's been waiting 3 years for an opening. Looks like you just handed him one." He left before Vivian could respond. Mrs. Kwan sighed and returned to her vegetables. "Don't mind him. He's angry. Has been since the trial." "I don't blame him," Vivian said. "Damien destroyed his life. And now you're here to help destroy Damien's." Mrs. Kwan looked up. "Question is, are you ready for what that means?" Vivian picked at her eggs. "I don't even know what it means." "It means war, girl. Damien won't let you go quietly. Your family won't let the merger collapse without a fight. And Lucien?" She shook her head. "Lucien's been holding back for years. You just gave him permission to stop." The front door opened. Footsteps crossed the foyer. Vivian's pulse jumped before she could stop it. Lucien appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed in a dark suit and looking like he'd already put in a full day's work. His eyes found Vivian immediately, scanning her face with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You slept," he observed. "A little." "Good." He grabbed coffee, black, and leaned against the counter. "We need to talk about next steps." "Next steps?" "Damien knows you're here by now. He'll make a move, probably today." Lucien's expression was all business. "I need to know what you want to do." Vivian set down her fork. "What are my options?" 1. I can arrange transport out of Miami. New city, new identity, enough money to start over clean. Damien never finds you. And 2. Lucien's eyes darkened. "You stay. We make this a war. Use you being here to destabilize Damien's reputation, his business relationships, his control. Force him to react publicly. And when he does..." He paused. "We finish what he started 3 years ago." The kitchen fell silent except for the knife against Mrs. Kwan's cutting board. Steady, rhythmic, like a countdown. Vivian looked at Lucien, really looked at him. This man who'd pulled her from the rain, sheltered her without asking for anything, and was now offering her both escape and revenge. "If I stay," she said slowly, "Damien will come for me, for you. This could get people killed." "It could," Lucien agreed, "but it could also end him, permanently. You're asking me to choose between running and fighting. I'm asking you to choose for yourself, for the first time in your life." Vivian's hands trembled. She pressed them flat against the marble island, feeling the cool stone ground her. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run, disappear, rebuild somewhere Damien's shadow couldn't reach. But the memory of his smirk rose up like poison. "Don't be dramatic, Viv." She looked up at Lucien. "If I stay, if we do this, I'm not just a pawn. I'm not just the sad ex-fiancé you parade around to embarrass him. I'm in this completely, or I'm not in it at all." Something flickered in Lucien's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Agreed," he said simply. "And when it's over, when Damien's destroyed, I walk away, free. No obligations." "You'll have my protection for life," Lucien said. But yes, no obligations. Vivian took a breath, released it, made the choice that would either save her or destroy her. Then I'm staying. Mrs. Kwan's knife paused mid-chop. Ethan appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. And Lucian's expression shifted into something dark and satisfied and absolutely merciless. Good, he said quietly, because Damien Torres just pulled up outside. The doorbell rang, and Vivian's new war began. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, insistent. Vivian's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. Through the kitchen doorway, she could see the front entrance. Massive double doors with frosted glass panels that turned the figures outside into dark, warped shadows. 3 of them. Maybe 4. Lucien didn't move. He stood against the counter, coffee in hand, watching Vivian with an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. You don't have to see him, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Vivian set the cup down before her shaking hands could betray her. If I hide now, I'll be hiding forever. Mrs. Kwan wiped her hands on a towel. I'll be in the next room. You need me, you shout. Ethan pulled out his phone. I'm recording everything, just in case Damien tries something stupid. He will, Lucien said. He straightened, buttoned his suit jacket with mechanical precision, and looked at Vivian. Stay behind me. Don't engage unless you want to. And if things go bad, they're already bad, Vivian interrupted. She stood, smoothed down the borrowed cashmere sweater, and lifted her chin. Let's get this over with. Lucian's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then he turned and walked toward the entrance with the kind of calm that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times before. Vivian followed, heart hammering against her ribs. Lucien opened the door. Damien Torres stood on the marble steps like he owned them. Tall, conventionally handsome in that corporate America way, with styled blonde hair and a suit that screamed old money. He looked exactly the same as yesterday, perfect, polished, completely unbothered by the fact that he'd destroyed his fiancée 24 hours ago. Behind him stood 2 men in dark suits. Security, muscle, the kind of guys who got paid to look intimidating and break fingers when negotiations failed. Damien's eyes locked onto Vivian immediately. His expression flickered, surprise, anger, something that might have been satisfaction before smoothing back into practiced charm. Vivian, he said her name like a reprimand. Thank God. I've been looking everywhere for you. Vivian said nothing. Her throat had closed up the second she saw his face. Damien's gaze shifted to Lucien. The charm vanished instantly, replaced by cold assessment. Veil, he said flatly. I should have known you'd be involved in this. You're on my property, Lucien replied, voice pleasant and absolutely deadly. I suggest you state your business quickly. My business is with my fiancée. Damien's attention snapped back to Vivian. We need to talk, privately. No. The word came out stronger than Vivian expected. She stepped forward, positioning herself beside Lucien instead of behind him. We don't. Damien's jaw tightened. Vivian, you're being irrational. Yesterday was a misunderstanding. Cassidy and I, we were just fucking in the coat room? Vivian's voice cut through his explanation like glass. Yeah, Damien, I misunderstood that completely. One of the security guys shifted uncomfortably. Damien's face flushed. This isn't the place for this conversation, he said through gritted teeth. Then leave, Lucien suggested, because she's not going anywhere with you. She's my fiancée. Was, Vivian corrected. Past tense. We're done, Damien. The hell we are. Damien took a step forward. Lucien moved instantly, positioning himself between them with the fluid efficiency of someone trained for violence. Damien stopped, fists clenched, glaring at Lucien with barely contained rage. You think you can just walk away? After everything our family's invested in this merger? After 2 years of planning? I think I can do whatever I want, Vivian said, since I'm the one who got cheated on. It was one mistake. For months, Damien. Months. With my sister. Vivian's voice shook, but she didn't back down. You don't get to call that a mistake. Damien's expression hardened. He looked at Lucien, then back at Vivian, and something calculating entered his eyes. So this is how it is, he said slowly. You run straight to the enemy, to the man who's been trying to destroy my family for years. That's your play? I'm not playing anything, Vivian shot back. I just needed somewhere safe to go. Safe? Damien laughed, sharp and ugly. You think Vale's house is safe? Jesus, Vivian, you're more naive than I thought. He's using you. He's been waiting for an opportunity like this, and you just handed it to him. Better used than betrayed, Vivian said coldly. The words landed like a slap. Damien's face went white, then red. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. Both of you. This merger was worth $40 million. My father, your father, the investors, they're not going to just let you walk away because you got your feelings hurt. Then they can be disappointed, Vivian said. I'm done being sold for business deals. Damien stared at her like she'd grown a second head, like the idea of her having an opinion, having agency, was completely foreign to him. Maybe it was. You have 24 hours, Damien said finally, addressing Vivian but looking at Lucien. 24 hours to come to your senses and come home. After that, this gets ugly. For everyone. It's already ugly, Lucien said pleasantly. Now get off my property before I have you removed. Damien's security guys tensed. For one terrible second, Vivian thought violence was about to erupt right there on the pristine marble steps. Then Damien raised a hand, stopping them. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Vivian replied. It is. Damien held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back to his car. A silver Porsche that probably cost more than most people's houses. His security followed. The engine purred to life, and they disappeared down the long driveway in a spray of gravel and expensive exhaust. Lucien closed the door. The silence that followed felt like pressure against Vivian's eardrums. Well, Ethan said from the hallway, phone still recording, that went about as well as expected. Vivian's legs gave out. She caught herself against the wall, breathing hard, feeling the adrenaline crash through her system like a tidal wave. Her hands were shaking, her vision blurred. Lucien was there instantly, one hand on her elbow, steadying her. Breathe, he said quietly. Just breathe. I can't, Vivian gasped. I can't believe You stood up to him, Lucien said. That's what you did, and you didn't break. Vivian looked up at him. His face was close, focused entirely on her, and for the first time she noticed the thin scar along his jawline, a reminder that this man knew violence intimately. He's going to make this worse, she whispered. I know. People are going to get hurt. Probably. And you're okay with that? Lucien's expression was unreadable. I've been at war with Damien Torres for 3 years. The only difference now is that you're involved. And if you want to walk away, if you want me to put you on a plane tonight, I will. No judgment, no consequences. Vivian's breath steadied. She straightened, pulling away from Lucien's supporting hand, and looked toward the front door where Damien had stood minutes ago. No, she said. I'm staying. I'm finishing this. Behind her, Ethan muttered, Oh, this is going to be a shit show. Mrs. Kwan appeared with tea. Sit down before you fall down, girl. You look like death. Vivian let herself be herded into the living room, all glass and steel and furniture that probably belonged in a museum. She collapsed onto a leather sofa while Mrs. Kwan pressed a cup of something hot and sweet into her hands. Lucien remained standing, hands in his pockets, staring out at the bay. He'll call your father next, he said without turning around. Probably already has. They'll coordinate, apply pressure from every angle. Let them, Vivian said. I'm done being pressured. They'll threaten you financially, cut you off, freeze your accounts. I don't care. They'll drag your name through the media, make you look unstable, unreliable. Still don't care. Lucien finally turned to look at her. They'll come after me, use every connection they have to make my life difficult, and by extension, yours. Vivian met his eyes over the rim of her teacup. Then we make their lives more difficult. Isn't that how this works? Ethan laughed from the doorway. Oh, I like her. Can we keep her? Ethan, Lucien said warningly. What? I'm just saying she's got spine. That's rare in Damien's circle. Ethan walked into the room, dropping onto the opposite sofa. So what's the actual plan here? We just wait for them to attack and react? Or do we go on offense? Lucien was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, and made a call. Marcus, it's Vale. I need everything you have on the Torres merger. Financial statements, investor agreements, leveraged assets, all of it. He paused, listening. Because I'm about to blow it apart. How fast can you get it to me? Another pause. Good. Send it encrypted. He hung up. Vivian stared. You're going after the merger directly? If Damien wants to play hardball, we'll play hardball. His entire empire is built on that deal. His father's construction contracts, the waterfront developments, the political connections, it all hinges on merging with your family's real estate holdings. Lucian's expression was carved from ice. So we're going to expose every illegal shortcut, every bribed official, every piece of fraud they committed to make it happen. That'll destroy both families, Vivian said quietly. Yes, including mine. Yes. Vivian set down her teacup. Her hands were steady now. Do it! Mrs. Kwan made a small sound of approval. Ethan grinned like Christmas had come early. Lucienne studied Vivian for a long moment. You're sure? They sold me, Lucienne. Like property. Like I was just another asset to be traded for profit. Vivian's voice was cold, certain. So yeah, burn it all down. I want to watch. Something dangerous lit in Lucian's eyes. Something that suggested he'd been waiting for someone to give him permission for a very long time. All right, he said softly. Then let's go to war. What? The next 3 hours were a blur of phone calls, encrypted files, and information that made Vivian's stomach turn. Lucien's study was all dark wood and leather, with 3 computer monitors displaying spreadsheets, blueprints, and communication logs that told a story of corruption so deep it was almost impressive. Marcus, whoever he was, had delivered everything. And it was damning. Vivian sat in a chair by the window, reading through printed documents while Lucian and Ethan worked through the digital files. Every page was another nail in Damien's coffin. Bribed building inspectors, falsified environmental reports, shell companies used to hide money laundering, real estate deals that violated zoning laws. And at the center of it all, the Taurus-Mercer merger. Her father's signature was on half these documents. Jesus, Vivian whispered, staring at a contract that showed her family selling protected wetlands to a development company owned by Damien's father. They didn't even try to hide it. They didn't have to, Lucian said from behind the desk. Nobody was looking. That's how corruption works. Do it openly, confidently, and people assume it must be legal. Until someone decides to look closer, Ethan added. He was scrolling through emails on one of the monitors, expression grim. And holy shit, there's a lot to find. Damien's been skimming money from his own father's projects, hiding it in offshore accounts. Lucian looked up sharply. Show me. Ethan pulled up a series of bank transfers. Lucien studied them, eyes narrowing, and then he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Greedy and stupid, he murmured. That's a dangerous combination. What are you thinking? Vivian asked. I'm thinking we don't just destroy the merger. We destroy Damien's relationship with his father, turn them against each other. Lucien leaned back in his chair. Antonio Torres is a bastard, but he's a loyal bastard. If he finds out his son's been stealing from him, he'll cut Damien off completely, Ethan finished. Maybe worse. Vivian's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on an hour ago, and it hadn't stopped since. Mostly messages from her mother, each one more desperate than the last. Mom, please call me Mom. Your father is furious, Mom. This is affecting the entire family. Mom. Vivian, please, be reasonable. Vivian deleted them all. Then a new message appeared. Cassidy, can we talk? Please? Vivian's jaw clenched. She stared at her sister's name, feeling rage build behind her ribs like a living thing. Problem? Lucian asked, watching her. My sister wants to talk. Don't. I'm not going to. Vivian blocked the number. She made her choice. I'm making mine. Another message came through, this one from a number she didn't recognize. Unknown. You're making a mistake. This won't end well for you. Vivian showed it to Lucian. His expression darkened. Damien's getting desperate. That's good. Desperate people make mistakes. He pulled out his own phone. I'm putting security on you. Anywhere you go outside this house, you'll have protection. You think he'd actually hurt me? I think Damien Torres is realizing he's about to lose everything. and men like him don't lose gracefully. Lucien made a call, spoke in rapid Korean, then hung up. Jin will be your shadow, former special forces, completely trustworthy. He'll stay out of your way unless you need him. I don't need a bodyguard. You do now, Lucien said flatly. This isn't negotiable, Vivian. You're living under my roof, which makes you my responsibility. And I don't take chances with things I'm responsible for. The possessiveness in his voice should have been alarming. Instead, it made something warm and dangerous curl in Vivian's chest. Ethan coughed loudly. Okay, so while you two work out your protection kink, I'm going to keep digging through these emails. There's something here about a city council vote. Focus on the money, Lucien interrupted. Everything traces back to money. Find the accounts, find the transfers, find the proof. They worked through lunch. Mrs. Kwan brought sandwiches that nobody ate and coffee that disappeared in minutes. Outside, Miami blazed in afternoon sun, but inside Lucien's study, they were building something else. A case, a weapon, an ending. Around 3, Vivian's phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. From her father. She stared at the screen, watching Richard Mercer's name flash over and over. Lucien glanced up, saw her expression, and raised an eyebrow. Your move, he said quietly. Vivian answered. Put it on speaker. Vivian Marie Mercer. Her father's voice filled the room, cold, authoritative, completely controlled. We need to talk, now. We're talking, Vivian said. In person, this is not a conversation for phones. Then I guess we're not having it. Silence. She could practically hear her father recalculating. You're at Vale's house, he said finally. That's confirmed. Do you have any idea what you're doing? The position you've put this family in? I know exactly what I'm doing, Dad. I'm choosing myself over a business deal. This isn't about business. It's only about business. Vivian's control snapped. It's always been about business. You sold me to Damien like I was real estate, another property to develop and flip for profit. That's not... We were securing your future. You were securing yours. Vivian stood, pacing the study with the phone clutched in her hand. The merger, the investors, the expansion, that's all you cared about, not me, not whether I was happy, not whether Damien was a lying, cheating piece of shit. Language, Vivian. Fuck my language. The words felt like freedom. Damien was sleeping with Cassidy for months, Dad. And you knew, Mom knew, everyone knew except me. Her father's silence was answer enough. We thought it would pass, he said finally. Cassidy is young. Damien was, it was a phase. The important thing was the marriage, the merger. Vivian laughed, bitter and broken. The important thing? Right. God forbid we let human emotions get in the way of profit margins. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm being honest. And here's some more honesty, Dad. I'm done. With Damien. With the merger. With all of it. Find another daughter to sell. If you don't come home and fix this, you're out of the family, completely. No trust fund, no inheritance, no financial support whatsoever. The threat landed exactly like it was meant to, a punch to the gut disguised as concern. Vivian looked at Lucien. He was watching her steadily, expression unreadable, but his hands were clenched on the desk. Okay, Vivian said into the phone. Cut me off. I don't care anymore. Vivian, I mean it. Keep your money. Keep your legacy. I'd rather be broke and free than rich and suffocated. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, her father said coldly. No, Dad. The biggest mistake was believing you actually loved me more than your bank account. Vivian's voice broke, but she pushed through. I'm done. Don't call again. She hung up. The phone slipped from her hand. Vivian stood in the middle of Lucien's study, breathing hard, feeling like she'd just jumped off a cliff. Ethan whistled low. Well, that's one bridge thoroughly burned. You okay? Lucien asked quietly. Vivian nodded, then shook her head, then laughed, because what else was there to do? I just got disowned by my family for refusing to marry a cheater, she said. So no, I'm not okay, but I'm free. And that's worth it. Lucien stood, crossed the room, stopped in front of her with that same careful distance he always maintained, close enough to help, far enough to give her space. You're not broke, he said. What? You said you'd rather be broke and free. You're not broke. I'll make sure of that. Lucien, I can't. You can, and you will. His voice was firm. I have more money than I know what to do with. You need a fresh start. That's not charity. That's strategy. Damien and your father are counting on you being helpless without them. So we're going to prove them wrong. Vivian stared at him. This man who'd been a stranger 48 hours ago. This dangerous, complicated, surprisingly gentle man who kept offering her things she didn't know how to accept. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Lucien's expression softened fractionally. Because nobody helped me when I needed it, and I'm done watching people get destroyed by the same men who destroyed my family. Before Vivian could respond, Ethan's computer chimed loudly. Guys? He was staring at one of the monitors, face pale. We've got a problem. Lucien moved instantly. What is it? Email just came through Damien's account. He's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Torres Construction, Mercer Real Estate, all the major investors. Ethan scrolled rapidly. And look at the subject line. Vivian read it over his shoulder. R.E. Merger status and concerns. Regarding Vivian Mercer's mental stability. Her blood went cold. He's going to claim I'm having a breakdown, she said slowly. He's going to tell everyone I'm unstable, irrational, that I can't be trusted to make my own decisions. And then he'll push through the merger without you, Lucien finished, using your instability as justification. Your father will probably support it, concerned parent protecting his mentally unwell daughter. That son of a bitch, Vivian breathed. Ethan kept reading. It gets worse. He's bringing a psychiatrist to the meeting, Dr. Andrew Chen, prepared to testify that Vivian shows signs of emotional distress and impaired judgment. Paid testimony, Lucien said, but it doesn't matter. Once it's on record, the damage is done. Everyone will question your competence, your decisions, everything. Vivian felt panic rising. This was worse than being cut off. This was being erased, having her agency, her sanity, her entire identity called into question by men who saw her as an obstacle to be removed. What do I do? She asked. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus, I need a lawyer, corporate and civil, someone aggressive who doesn't mind getting dirty. Pause. Tomorrow morning, Vale Estate, non-negotiable. Another pause. Good. Send me their information. He hung up and looked at Vivian. Tomorrow morning, Damien's going to try to destroy your credibility. So tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into that board meeting, prove you're perfectly sane, and blow up everything he's built. How? Lucien's smile was sharp and merciless, with the truth, and every piece of evidence we've gathered. You're going to stand in front of those investors and expose exactly what Damien is, what they all are. And you're going to do it calmly, rationally, and on the record. They'll destroy me, Vivian whispered. They'll try, Lucien corrected, but they won't succeed, because you won't be alone. I'll be there. My lawyers will be there. And if they want to question your sanity for refusing to marry a man who betrayed you, his eyes glittered dangerously, then we'll question theirs for expecting you to. Vivian's breath steadied. The panic receded, replaced by something harder, angrier. I want to do more than expose him, she said. I want to ruin him, completely. Then we will, Lucien promised. But first we need to get through tomorrow without them railroading you into looking unstable. I can do that. I know you can. He hesitated, then reached out and touched her shoulder, brief, grounding. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. Vivian nodded. But as she turned to leave the study, Ethan's voice stopped her. Hey, Vivian? She looked back. He was watching her with an expression that was equal parts respect and concern. For what it's worth, you're the first person who's ever stood up to Damien and meant it. That takes guts. He hesitated. Just don't let this war cost you more than it costs him, okay? Vivian managed a smile. I'll try. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, she knew Ethan was right to worry. Because she wasn't just fighting Damien anymore. She was fighting her entire past. Every decision that had led her to those cathedral steps. Every moment she'd stayed silent instead of speaking up. And tomorrow, in front of everyone who'd ever underestimated her, she was going to prove exactly how much fight she had left. Night fell heavy and humid. Vivian stood on the terrace outside her room, watching Miami's lights glitter across the bay like scattered jewels. Somewhere out there, Damien was planning his next move. Her father was probably drinking scotch and cursing her name. Cassidy was... Actually, Vivian didn't care what Cassidy was doing. The door behind her opened quietly. She didn't turn around. Didn't need to. She'd started recognizing Lucian's footsteps. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Don't want to. Every time I close my eyes, I see tomorrow. Everything that could go wrong." Lucian joined her at the railing. He'd changed into dark pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Less armor, more human. "It's going to go wrong," he said bluntly. "Damien's not going to let you walk into that meeting and speak unchallenged. He'll interrupt, discredit, make it ugly. Thanks for the pep talk." "I'm not giving you a pep talk. I'm giving you reality." Lucian turned to face her. "Tomorrow's going to be brutal. They're going to attack you personally, question your judgment, make you feel small. And if you go in there expecting them to be fair or reasonable, you'll break." Vivian met his eyes. "Then what should I expect?" "War. Expect war. And fight back twice as hard." His voice was quiet but unyielding. "You're not going in there to ask permission or explain yourself. You're going in there to burn their world down, so don't apologize, don't justify. Just tell the truth and watch them scramble." Something fierce and bright ignited in Vivian's chest. "I can do that," she said. "I know." Lucian's expression softened slightly. "You're stronger than you think, Vivian. Stronger than they've ever let you be." "I don't feel strong. I feel terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it stop you." They stood in silence for a moment, the city breathing below them, the bay dark and endless. Vivian was hyper-aware of Lucian's proximity, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell the cedar and smoke that seemed to cling to him. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Always." "Why do you care?" "Really? Not the revenge thing, not the war with Damien. Why do you actually care what happens to me?" Lucian was quiet for so long, Vivian thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, voice low and raw, "Because I know what it's like to be used. To have people look at you and see a weapon or a tool or a threat, but never a person." He stared out at the water. "And I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by men who see them as collateral damage." "I'm not good," Vivian said. "I let this happen. I ignored the warning signs. I convinced myself Damien loved me when—" "Stop." Lucian turned to her, expression fierce. "You were manipulated, gaslit, controlled. That's not weakness. That's what abusers do. They make you doubt yourself until you can't trust your own instincts." "How do you know so much about it?" His jaw tightened. "Because I watched my mother stay with my father for 15 years while he drank and gambled and hit her. And everyone told her it was her fault, that she wasn't supportive enough, that if she just tried harder, he'd change." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "She died still believing it was her fault. And I swore I'd never let anyone do that to someone I—" He stopped abruptly. "Someone you what?" Vivian asked softly. Lucian looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time since they'd met, Vivian saw past the controlled exterior to the raw humanity underneath. "Someone I care about," he finished quietly. The air between them shifted, became charged, electric. Vivian's heart hammered. She knew she should step back, create distance. This was dangerous territory, falling for the man who'd saved her, who'd given her shelter, who was helping her destroy her enemies. But she didn't step back. Instead, she moved closer. "Lucien." His phone buzzed, harsh, insistent, shattering the moment like dropped glass. Lucien pulled it out, scowling at the screen. Then his expression went dark. "What?" Vivian asked. "Security alert. Someone just tried to access the property through the south gate." He was already moving toward the door. "Stay here. Lock this door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Mrs. Kwan. What if it's probably Damien's people trying to rattle us. Or worse." Lucian paused in the doorway. "Please, Vivian, just stay here." Then he was gone, moving fast and silent through the house. Vivian locked the door, backed away from the terrace. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown. Last chance. Come home or face consequences. Another message seconds later. Unknown. We know where you are. We know who you're with. This ends badly for you. Vivian's hand shook. She pulled up her recent calls, found Lucian's number, and was about to press dial when she heard it. Voices downstairs, raised, angry. Then a crash. Vivian's breath stopped. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. More voices. A woman shouting, "Mrs. Kwan, maybe?" Then Lucian's voice, cold and deadly, speaking Korean too fast for Vivian to catch, even if she understood the language. Another crash, closer this time. Vivian's phone rang. She nearly dropped it. Lucien's name flashed on the screen. "Hello? Stay in your room." His voice was clipped, controlled, but she could hear violence underneath. "Do not come out. Do you understand?" "What's happening?" "Damien sent people. We're handling it. Just stay." The line cut off. Vivian stared at her phone, pulse thundering. Every instinct screamed at her to hide. Lock herself in the bathroom. Wait for someone to tell her it was safe. But she was done hiding. She grabbed the heaviest object in the room, a marble bookend, and unlocked the door. The hallway was empty. Too quiet. Vivian moved toward the stairs, gripping the bookend like a weapon, trying to remember everything she'd ever seen in action movies about not getting killed. Voices drifted up from below, clearer now. "Told you to leave. We're not leaving without her." "Then you're not leaving at all." Vivian reached the top of the stairs and looked down. The scene in the foyer was controlled chaos. 3 men in dark clothes, not Damien's usual security, these guys looked military, were being held at gunpoint by Lucian's people. Ethan stood off to the side, phone out, still recording. Mrs. Kwan was shouting in Korean, brandishing what looked like a kitchen knife. And Lucian stood in the center of it all, perfectly calm, with a gun pointed at the lead intruder's head. "You have 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't kill you right now," Lucian said pleasantly. The lead guy, buzz cut, scar across his cheek, smiled. "Because Damien Torres wants his property back, and he's willing to pay for the damage." "Vivian's not property." "Didn't mean her. Meant the information you stole. Corporate files. Financial records. That's corporate espionage, Vale. Illegal. Punishable. Bad for business." Lucian's expression didn't change. Marcus obtained those files legally through public records requests and whistleblower testimony. If Damien wants to claim they're stolen, he's welcome to explain to the SEC why he thinks legal documents are illegal. The guy's smile faltered. "Now," Lucien continued, voice dropping to something lethal, "you're going to leave. You're going to tell Damien that if he sends anyone to my property again, I won't be this polite. And you're going to remember that I know exactly who you are, Marcus Chen. Former Marines, dishonorably discharged for assault, currently employed by a shell company that Damien uses for illegal wet work, which means if you disappear tonight, nobody's going to ask questions." Marcus's face went pale. "Do we understand each other?" Lucien asked softly. "Yeah, we understand." "Good. Get out." Lucian's security escorted the 3 men toward the door. Vivian watched from the stairs, bookend still clutched in her hand, as they were forcibly removed from the property. The door slammed. Lucian lowered his gun, and then he saw Vivian on the stairs. His expression shifted instantly, from cold control to something close to panic. "I told you to stay in your room," he said. "I heard crashing. I thought—" "You thought what? That you could fight off armed intruders with a bookend?" He crossed to the stairs in 3 long strides. "Jesus, Vivian, they could have grabbed you, used you as leverage. Do you have any idea what Damien would do?" "I wasn't going to hide while you got hurt protecting me," Vivian interrupted. Lucian stopped, stared at her. Something complicated crossed his face. "You're insane," he said finally. "So are you." "That's different." "How?" "Because I'm expendable. You're not." The words hit Vivian like a physical blow. She descended the remaining stairs until she was standing directly in front of him. "Don't say that," she said quietly. "Don't you dare say that." "It's true. It's not." Vivian's voice shook. "You're not expendable, Lucien. Not to Ethan. Not to Mrs. Kwan. And not to She stopped, breath catching. Lucien's eyes searched hers. "Not to who, Vivian?" The house fell silent around them. Even Ethan had disappeared. It was just them in the aftermath of violence, standing too close, everything unsaid finally demanding to be spoken. "Not to me," Vivian whispered. Lucian's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. "This is dangerous," he said softly. "I know. If we do this, if we cross this line, it complicates everything. I don't care. You should." "Well, I don't." Vivian leaned into his touch. "I'm tired of being careful. Tired of doing what I should. I've been following other people's rules my entire life, and where did it get me? Engaged to a man who didn't love me. Used by a family who didn't care. I'm done, Lucien. I'm done being who everyone else needs me to be." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "And who do you want to be?" "I don't know yet, but I know I want to figure it out standing next to you." Something in Lucian's expression cracked. The control, the distance, all of it fell away, leaving behind someone raw and real and desperately human. "Vivian!" She kissed him before he could talk himself out of it. Lucian froze for half a second. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with an intensity that stole her breath. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce and claiming, and it wasn't gentle. It was fierce and claiming and desperate, like drowning and breathing at the same time. Lucian's hand tangled in Vivian's hair, while his other arm locked around her waist, pulling her flush against him with enough force to make her gasp against his mouth. Vivian kissed him back with everything she had. All the rage and fear and loneliness she'd been carrying for months poured into this single moment. Her fingers clutched at his shirt, feeling the tension in his shoulders, the barely restrained violence that lived just beneath his skin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "Good," Vivian whispered. "I want everything to change." His grip tightened fractionally. "Tomorrow's going to be worse now. Damien will see this as a declaration of war." "It is a declaration of war." Lucian pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were dark, intense, searching for something in her expression. "You're sure about this? About me? Are you always this paranoid after kissing someone?" Only when kissing them could get them killed. Vivian's breath caught. The reality of what she'd just done, who she'd just aligned herself with, crashed over her like cold water. But instead of fear, she felt something close to exhilaration. "I'm sure," she said firmly, "about all of it." Lucien studied her for another long moment. Then he stepped back, creating distance, and his expression shifted back into something controlled and strategic. "Get some sleep," he said. "We leave for the board meeting at 8. Dress professionally. Conservative. We need you looking stable and competent." "Yes, sir," Vivian said, unable to keep the sarcasm out of her voice. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "And Vivian, next time armed men break into my house, you stay in your room. I can't protect you if you're running toward danger with a bookend. I'll think about it. That's not comforting. Good night, Lucien." She turned and walked up the stairs, feeling his eyes track her the entire way. Only when she reached her room did she allow herself to collapse against the door, heart racing, lips still tingling from the kiss. What the hell had she just done? But even as doubt crept in, Vivian knew the truth. She'd do it again, 1,000 times over. Because for the first time in her life, she'd chosen something for herself. Not because it was safe or smart or approved by her family. Because it felt right. She crawled into bed, still wearing her clothes, too exhausted to change, and fell into a dreamless sleep that felt like falling off a cliff. Aunt. Morning came brutal and bright. Vivian woke to Mrs. Kwan shaking her shoulder and thrusting a cup of coffee into her hands before she was fully conscious. "Up," the older woman commanded. "Shower. I laid out clothes. You have 40 minutes before the lawyers arrive." Vivian stumbled into the bathroom, brain still foggy. The hot water helped. She scrubbed last night off her skin, the fear, the kiss, the violence, and tried to armor herself for what was coming. The clothes Mrs. Kwan had chosen were perfect. A charcoal gray pantsuit that screamed competent professional, a white blouse, minimal jewelry. Vivian looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked strong, put together, dangerous, good. Downstairs, Lucien's dining room had been converted into a war room. Three people Vivian didn't recognize sat around the massive table, laptops open, documents spread everywhere. Lucian stood at the head, already dressed in a black suit that made him look like he was attending either a funeral or a hostile takeover. Probably both. He looked up when Vivian entered. His expression was professionally neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Heat, recognition, memory of last night. "Vivian, meet your legal team," he said smoothly. "Rachel Kim, corporate litigation. David Chen, civil rights. And Marcus Hall, who you've heard me mention." Rachel stood first, Korean-American, late 30s, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made Vivian's spine straighten automatically. "Ms. Mercer, I've reviewed everything Mr. Vale provided. We have a strong case." "For what exactly?" Vivian asked. "Defamation, coercion, and if we're feeling aggressive, fraud." Rachel smiled like a shark. "Your ex-fiancé and his father have made a lot of enemies. We're going to give those enemies ammunition." David spoke up next. Black, mid-40s, with kind eyes that contradicted the steel in his voice. "And if they try to question your mental competency, we shut it down immediately. Dr. Chen has no legal standing to evaluate you without your consent. Any testimony he provides is hearsay and inadmissible in any formal proceeding." "But the damage will already be done," Vivian said quietly. "Everyone in that room will hear it." "Let them," Marcus cut in. He was older, gray-haired, with the weathered look of someone who'd seen too many courtrooms. "Because then we counter with evidence of systematic manipulation and emotional abuse. We paint Damien as the unstable one, a man so desperate to control his fiancée that he fabricated a mental health crisis when she discovered his infidelity." Vivian's coffee cup trembled slightly. She set it down before anyone could notice. "This is going to get ugly," she said. "It's already ugly," Lucian replied. "We're just making it public." For the next 30 minutes, they drilled Vivian on what to say, how to respond, which questions to deflect. Rachel played Damien, throwing accusatory questions at Vivian with increasing hostility until Vivian's hands stopped shaking and her voice stayed level. "Good," Rachel said finally. "You're ready. Just remember, you're not there to convince them to like you. You're there to prove you're competent, rational, and completely done with their bullshit. I can do that. I know you can." Rachel gathered her papers. "One more thing. Whatever happens in that room, don't react emotionally. Damien's going to try to bait you, make you look unstable. Don't give him the satisfaction." Vivian nodded, but inside her stomach churned with anxiety. Ethan appeared in the doorway, dressed surprisingly professionally. "Cars are ready. Jin's driving Vivian's vehicle. I'm riding with David and Marcus. Lucien." "I'm with Vivian," Lucien said. Not a question. Nobody argued. They left in a convoy, 3 black SUVs moving through Miami's morning traffic like sharks through water. Vivian sat in the back of the middle vehicle with Lucien beside her and Jin driving with silent efficiency. "You're quiet," Lucien observed. "I'm terrified." "Good. Fear makes you careful." He glanced at her. "But don't let it make you small. You're walking into that room as an equal, not a victim." "What if I can't do it? What if I freeze?" Lucian's hand found hers in the space between them. The touch was brief, grounding. "Then I'll handle it," he said simply. "But you won't freeze. You're stronger than you think." Vivian wanted to believe him. She really did. The Taurus construction headquarters loomed ahead, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in downtown Miami, with Damien's family name etched across the entrance in letters 3 feet tall. Vivian's stomach clenched as they pulled into the parking garage. This was it. No turning back. They took the elevator to the 15th floor, executive conference rooms where deals worth millions were negotiated and lives were destroyed with handshakes. Rachel, David, and Marcus flanked Vivian like a phalanx. Lucien walked slightly behind, close enough to intervene, but far enough to let Vivian take point. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw them. "Ms. Mercer, we weren't expecting conference room 3, Rachel said smoothly. "We're here for the 9 o'clock board meeting." "I'm not sure you're on the list." "We're on the list," Lucien said quietly. The receptionist looked at him. Whatever she saw in his expression made her go pale. She nodded quickly and gestured toward the hallway. The conference room doors were already open. Inside, Vivian could see them, her father Richard, looking stern and exhausted. Damien's father, Antonio Torres, a silver-haired man with a politician's smile and a shark's eyes. 3 other investors she recognized vaguely from family events. And Damien himself, standing by the windows in a navy suit, looking calm and collected and completely in control. He turned when Vivian entered. His expression flickered, surprise, anger, something that might have been fear, before settling into cold assessment. "Vivian," he said, "I'm glad you came to your senses." "I didn't," Vivian replied evenly. "I came to set the record straight." Her father stood. "Vivian, this isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place, Dad." Vivian walked to the conference table and set her bag down with deliberate precision. "You called this meeting to discuss my mental stability. I'm here to prove you wrong." Antonio Torres cleared his throat. "Ms. Mercer, we're all concerned about you. Recent events suggest you may be experiencing emotional distress." "Recent events suggest I discovered my fiancé was sleeping with my sister," Vivian interrupted. "That's not emotional distress. That's a rational response to betrayal." Damien's jaw tightened. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Am I?" Vivian turned to face him fully. "Tell me, Damien, how long were you sleeping with Cassidy? Because witnesses say months, plural." The room went silent. One of the investors shifted uncomfortably. "This is a private matter," Damien said tightly. "It stopped being private when you called a board meeting to question my sanity." Vivian's voice was steady, cold. "You want to talk about my judgment? Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about the offshore accounts you've been hiding from your father, the construction contracts you've been skimming money from, the environmental violations on the waterfront project." Antonio's head snapped toward his son. "What is she talking about?" "She's lying." "I have documentation," Vivian said. Rachel was already pulling folders from her bag, sliding them across the table. "Bank transfers, falsified invoices, everything." Damien's face went white, then red. "You stole confidential files. We obtained public records through legal channels," Rachel said smoothly. "If you'd like to challenge the authenticity of these documents, we can arrange a full forensic audit. I'm sure the SEC would be interested in participating." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Antonio Torres opened one of the folders. His expression went from confused to furious in the span of 3 seconds. "Damien," he said quietly, "is this true?" "Dad, I can explain. Is this true?" Damien's mouth opened, closed. He looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. "Some of it," he admitted finally, "but it's not what it looks like." "It looks like you've been embezzling from your own family's company," Antonio said, voice like ice. "It looks like you've committed fraud on multiple federal projects. It looks like you've put this entire organization at risk." "I was trying to expand. You were trying to steal." Antonio slammed the folder shut. "How long, Damien? How long have you been doing this?" Vivian watched with grim satisfaction as Damien scrambled for answers, but her father's voice cut through the chaos. "This doesn't change the fact that the merger is still necessary," Richard said. "Whatever personal issues exist between Damien and Vivian, the business arrangement stands. We've already committed to investors. The business arrangement is over," Vivian said. Her father's eyes narrowed. "You don't have the authority." "I'm withdrawing my consent," which, according to the prenuptial agreement you had me sign, invalidates the entire merger clause. Vivian pulled out her own document, annotated, highlighted, legally reviewed. Section 12, subsection 4. Either party may withdraw consent up to 48 hours before the marriage. We're well within that window. Rachel smiled. "We had a contract lawyer review it this morning. Ms. Mercer's withdrawal is legally binding." Richard's face turned purple. "You can't do this. I just did. The investors will pull out, then let them." Vivian's voice was hard. "I'm not marrying a man who cheated on me just to save your business deal, Dad. Find another way to make your money." Antonio Torres was still glaring at his son. "Get out of my sight," he said quietly. "We'll discuss this later, privately." Damien looked like he'd been slapped. "Dad, now." Damien left, door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the glass walls. The remaining investors exchanged uncomfortable looks. One of them, an older man Vivian vaguely recognized, stood and gathered his papers. "I think we're done here," he said. Richard, Antonio, I'll be in touch about dissolving my position in this venture. This level of internal corruption is unacceptable. Another investor followed. Then the third. Within 5 minutes, the conference room had emptied except for Vivian, her legal team, Lucian, her father, and Antonio Torres. Antonio looked at Vivian with something that might have been respect. You're a clever woman, Miss Mercer, he said, but you've made powerful enemies today. I already had powerful enemies, Vivian replied. I just stopped pretending I didn't. Antonio nodded slowly. Then he looked at Richard. We're done. Tell your daughter to watch her back. Damien doesn't handle rejection well. He left without another word. Richard stood frozen, staring at the empty conference table where $40 million had just evaporated. You've destroyed everything, he said quietly. No, Dad. You destroyed everything the moment you tried to sell me. Vivian picked up her bag. I'm just refusing to be part of it anymore. You're out of the family, completely. I meant what I said. I know. You'll have nothing, no money, no connections, no future. Vivian looked at Lucian, who stood silent and watchful by the door, then back at her father. I'll have my dignity, she said. That's more than you've ever had. She walked out without looking back. The elevator ride down felt like flying. Vivian's hands were shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system in waves, but she'd done it. She'd actually done it. Rachel was grinning. That was beautiful. Did you see Antonio's face when he realized his son was stealing from him? Priceless, David agreed. And your delivery was perfect, Vivian. Calm, rational, completely in control. Marcus was already on his phone. I'm sending these documents to 3 different news outlets. By tonight, the Torres corruption story will be everywhere. Vivian leaned against the elevator wall, feeling dizzy. Is it always like this? This insane? Only when you're fighting people who deserve it, Rachel said. You did good today. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. Jin was waiting by the SUV, scanning the area with professional paranoia. Clear, he said quietly. They piled into the vehicles. Vivian collapsed into the back seat next to Lucian, feeling like she'd just run a marathon. You okay? He asked. I don't know. Ask me in an hour when my brain catches up. Lucian's hand found hers again. This time, he didn't let go. They were halfway back to the estate when Jin's voice cut through the silence. We've got a tail, black sedan, 3 cars back. Been following since we left downtown. Lucian tensed immediately. Damien's people? Likely. Lose them. Jin's driving shifted from cautious to aggressive. He took a hard right, then a left, weaving through Miami traffic with practiced efficiency. The sedan followed. They're not trying to hide it, Jin observed. That's intentional. They want us to know they're there. Intimidation tactic, Lucian said. He pulled out his phone, made a call. We're being followed. Black sedan, Florida plates. He rattled off the license number Jin called out. Run it, now. Vivian's pulse spiked. What if they try something? They won't. Too public. Too many witnesses. But Lucian's hand had moved to his waistband, where Vivian now noticed the outline of a gun. Jin, take us to the safe house instead of the estate. Copy that. The safe house turned out to be a nondescript condo building in Coral Gables, all concrete and anonymity. Jin pulled into the underground garage, and they waited in tense silence until the tail drove past without stopping. They're gone, Jin confirmed. Lucian exhaled slowly. All right. Everyone inside. We'll wait here until I get confirmation on who's behind that sedan. The condo was surprisingly comfortable. Modern furniture, stocked kitchen, bulletproof windows. Clearly, Lucian had planned for contingencies. Rachel, David, and Marcus set up shop at the dining table, already drafting follow-up legal documents. Ethan appeared from somewhere with coffee and the nervous energy of someone who'd been too close to danger too many times. Vivian stood by the window, watching Miami spread out below them, and tried to process everything that had just happened. She'd done it. She'd actually stood up to Damien, destroyed his credibility, blown up the merger. So why did she feel like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop? Lucian's phone rang. He answered, listened, then his expression went very still. You're certain? He asked quietly. Vivian turned. Something in his tone made her stomach clench. Understood. Send me everything you have. Lucian hung up and looked at Vivian. His face was carefully blank, which somehow made it worse. What? She asked. The sedan was registered to a private security firm, the same firm your father uses. Vivian's breath stopped. My father sent people to follow us? It gets worse. Lucian's voice was flat. Marcus just found something in the financial records. A series of transfers between your father's accounts and Antonio Torres, dating back 3 years. So? They've been business partners? These weren't business transactions, Vivian. They were personal, large amounts, regular intervals. Lucien pulled up something on his phone, showed her the screen. Your father's been paying Antonio Torres $200,000 a month for the past 3 years. Vivian stared at the numbers. They didn't make sense. I don't understand. Why would my father pay blackmail? Rachel said quietly. She'd been reading over Lucian's shoulder. That's a blackmail payment structure. The room tilted. No, Vivian said. That's not... My father wouldn't... There's more, Lucian said, and his voice was gentle in a way that made Vivian's skin go cold. Marcus traced the payments back to their origin. They started exactly 2 weeks after Ethan's arrest. Ethan looked up sharply. What? Lucian's jaw was tight. Your father didn't just know about the setup, Vivian. He orchestrated it. He and Antonio worked together to frame Ethan, destroy his business, and clear the way for Damien to take over the waterfront contracts. And Antonio's been bleeding him dry ever since, threatening to expose the whole thing if Richard doesn't pay. The words landed like physical blows. Vivian's knees went weak. She grabbed the window frame for support. You're wrong, she'd whispered. You have to be wrong. My father wouldn't do that. But even as she said it, she knew it was true. She could see it now, all the pieces falling into place. Her father's insistence on the merger, his fury when she left, the desperate phone calls. He hadn't been trying to save a business deal. He'd been trying to save himself. Vivian, Lucian started. Don't. Her voice cracked. Just don't. She walked into the bathroom and locked the door. Then she collapsed against the tile floor and let herself shatter. Vivian didn't know how long she sat there. Long enough for the tears to stop. Long enough for the shaking to ease. Long enough for rage to replace shock. A quiet knock on the door made her lift her head. Vivian? Lucian's voice. Careful. Concerned. Can I come in? She unlocked the door without standing. Lucian entered, closed the door behind him, and slid down the wall to sit beside her on the bathroom floor. He didn't try to touch her, didn't offer empty comfort, just sat there in silence, giving her space to exist in whatever she was feeling. My whole life is a lie, Vivian said finally. Her voice sounded hollowed out, empty. No. Your father's life is a lie. Yours is just beginning. He destroyed your family, ruined Ethan, got paid for it, and then tried to sell me to cover up the evidence. Vivian laughed bitterly. God, I'm so stupid. I should have seen it. All those business dinners, all those closed-door meetings. He was bleeding money for years, and I just thought, you thought your father was who he pretended to be? Lucian said quietly. That's not stupid. That's human. Vivian turned to look at him. How are you so calm about this? My father destroyed Ethan. He's the reason your brother... I know. Lucian's voice was hard. And part of me wants to burn your father's entire world down for it. But the other part... He paused, meeting her eyes. The other part knows that you're not responsible for what he did, and I'm not going to punish you for his crimes. Even though I'm the one who brought you all of this, the merger, the evidence, everything that's about to expose him, especially because of that. Lucien's expression softened fractionally. You didn't know, Vivian, but now you do. And you're still here, still fighting. That takes courage most people don't have. Vivian wanted to believe him, but the weight of her father's crimes pressed down like concrete. What happens now? She asked. Now we finish what we started. We expose everything. Your father's blackmail payments, the setup, all of it. Lucian stood, offered his hand. Antonio and Richard are both going down. The only question is whether you want to be there when it happens. Vivian took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. I want to be there, she said. I want to watch them both burn. They walked back into the main room. Rachel, David, and Marcus were huddled around a laptop, faces grim. "We've got a problem," Rachel said without preamble. "Another one?" Vivian asked. "Antonio Torres just filed an emergency restraining order against you, Lucian, and this entire legal team. Claims we're harassing him with false allegations and stolen documents. Hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning." "Let me guess," Lucian said. "Judge Morrison." Rachel nodded. "In Antonio's pocket. This is a stalling tactic. He's trying to prevent us from releasing any evidence until he can get his own narrative out first." "Can he do that?" Vivian asked. "Temporarily," David said. "If Morrison grants the order, we'll be legally prohibited from releasing information or contacting anyone involved in the case. Violation means jail time." Ethan swore creatively. "So we're just supposed to sit on evidence of massive corruption because a dirty judge says so?" "Not exactly," Marcus said slowly. He was staring at his laptop screen with an expression Vivian couldn't read. "There might be another play here. Something Antonio doesn't know about." "What?" Lucian asked. Marcus turned the laptop around. On the screen was an email chain, old, dating back years, between Antonio Torres and someone named Chen, the same Chen who'd tried to break into Lucian's estate last night. "Marcus Chen isn't just Antonio's muscle," Marcus Hall said, quietly. "He's Antonio's nephew. And according to these emails, he's been running the blackmail operation for the past 3 years, collecting payments from Richard, making threats when Richard tried to stop." Vivian's stomach turned. "How did you get these?" "Marcus Chen's email got compromised during a cybersecurity breach 6 months ago. It's all sitting in a public database, completely legal to access." Marcus smiled grimly. "And completely admissible in court." "So we have proof," Rachel said slowly. "Documented evidence of blackmail, extortion, conspiracy. Everything we need to destroy both Antonio and Richard." "And Marcus Chen," Ethan added. "That psychopath tried to grab Vivian last night. I want him in prison." Lucien was quiet, reading through the emails with focused intensity. Then he looked up. "We release everything," he said. "Tonight, before Antonio can get that restraining order. We send it to the press, the FBI, the SEC, everyone. Flood the zone before they can stop us." "That's aggressive," David said. "Once it's out, there's no taking it back." "Good." Lucien's voice was cold. "I want it permanent." "Vivian?" Rachel looked at her. "This is your father we're talking about. Once this goes public, he's done. Financially, legally, socially, there's no coming back from this. Are you sure you want to do this?" Vivian thought about her father's face in that conference room, his cold certainty that she would fall in line, his complete lack of remorse for what he'd done to Ethan, to Lucian's family, to her. "I'm sure," she said. "Do it." Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Sending now. FBI Field Office in Miami, SEC Enforcement Division, Miami Herald Investigative Team, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post." He hit enter with finality. "Done. It's out there." The room fell silent. Somewhere in Miami, Richard Mercer's phone was probably ringing. Antonio Torres was probably realizing his world was ending. And Vivian felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "There's going to be fallout," Rachel warned. "Your father will know you were involved. He'll come after you." "Let him try," Vivian said. Lucian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression went dark. "What?" Vivian asked. "Security alert from the main estate. Someone just breached the perimeter." He was already moving toward the door. "Jin, get everyone to the cars, now." They moved fast. Rachel and David grabbed their laptops while Marcus shoved documents into bags. Ethan was on his phone, coordinating with someone. Vivian followed Lucien toward the door, pulse hammering. "Who's at the estate?" she asked. "Mrs. Kwan," Lucien said tightly. "And my brother." The elevator ride down felt like hours. They burst into the parking garage, piling into the SUVs with military efficiency. Jin drove like Miami traffic laws didn't exist, weaving between cars while Lucien barked orders into his phone in rapid Korean. Vivian gripped the door handle, watching the city blur past, and prayed they weren't too late. The estate came into view. Nothing looked wrong from the outside. Same pristine lawn, same security gates. But as they pulled up the driveway, Vivian saw it. The front door was open. and there was blood on the marble steps. Lucien was out of the SUV before it fully stopped. He ran toward the house with a gun drawn, Jin right behind him. Rachel grabbed Vivian's arm before she could follow. "Stay in the car," she ordered. "No." "Vivian, if this is an active scene, you need to stay." A gunshot cracked through the air, then another. Vivian's heart stopped. She wrenched free from Rachel's grip and ran toward the house. The foyer was chaos. Furniture overturned, glass shattered across the floor, and in the center of it all, Mrs. Kwan sat on the floor with blood streaming from a cut on her forehead, cradling something in her lap. Ethan. Lucien was on his knees beside them, hands pressed against Ethan's chest where blood, too much blood, was soaking through his shirt. "Call 911, Lucien shouted. "Now!" David was already on it, voice urgent and precise. Vivian dropped beside Mrs. Kwan, her own hand shaking. "What happened?" "They came for him," Mrs. Kwan said, voice raw. "3 men. They wanted Ethan. Said it was revenge. Payback. She choked on a sob. "He fought them. Tried to protect me. They shot him. Stay with me," Lucien was saying to Ethan, voice tight with controlled panic. "Stay with me, you hear me? Don't you dare!" Ethan's eyes were open but unfocused. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth when he tried to speak. "Lou," he managed. "Don't talk, just breathe. Help's coming." Find them. I will. I swear to God I will. But you need to stay alive. Ethan, please." Vivian had never heard Lucien sound like this. Desperate, terrified, human. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Ethan's hand found Lucy. Ends gripped weakly. "Not your fault." "Shut up," Lucien said, voice breaking. "Just shut up and breathe." Paramedics flooded into the foyer. They pushed Lucien back, surrounded Ethan with practiced efficiency, started working with controlled urgency. Vivian watched them load Ethan onto a stretcher. Watched Lucien follow like a ghost, covered in his brother's blood, expression shattered. Mrs. Kwan was crying. Rachel was on the phone with someone. David was talking to police who'd arrived with the ambulance. And Vivian stood in the middle of Lucien's destroyed home, staring at the blood on the marble floor, and felt the truth settle into her bones. This was her fault. Her father had done this, Antonio had done this, and Ethan had paid the price. She found Lucien in the driveway, watching the ambulance disappear down the street, hands still stained red. "Lucien, don't." His voice was empty, hollow. "Whatever you're about to say, don't. This is because of me. Because I pushed them. Because I—" He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Vivian's words die. "They shot my brother," Lucien said quietly. "In my home. Because I got involved in this war. Because I let myself care about something other than revenge." His hands clenched. "And now Ethan might die because of it." "He's not going to die." You don't know that." Lucien's control finally snapped. "You don't know anything. This entire thing, this whole goddamn mess. I should never have stopped that night. I should have kept driving, left you on those steps where you belonged." The words hit like a slap. Vivian stepped back, throat tight. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Lucien's laugh was bitter. "Look at what this has cost. My brother bleeding out in an ambulance. My home destroyed. My family targeted. For what? To make you feel better about leaving Damien? That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Vivian. It's brutal and ugly and people die." He was shaking now, anger and fear pouring out. "You wanted war? Congratulations. This is what war looks like. Blood, loss, everything you love getting ripped away because you dared to fight back." Tears burned down Vivian's face. "I never wanted Ethan to get hurt. But he did. Because of you. Because I brought you into our lives and now they're targeting everyone I care about." Lucien's voice dropped to something deadly calm. "Get out." Vivian's breath stopped. "What?" "Get out of my house. Get out of my life. This is over." "Lucien, please. Now!" His shout echoed across the driveway. Rachel appeared in the doorway, expression alarmed. Vivian looked at Lucien, this man who'd saved her, protected her, kissed her like she mattered, and saw only rage and pain staring back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead. Vivian turned and walked toward the SUV where Jin stood waiting, expression carefully neutral. Behind her, she heard Lucian giving orders in Korean, voice sharp and merciless. The man she'd fallen for was gone. In his place stood something colder, harder, something that would burn the world down and not care who got caught in the flames. Jin drove Vivian to a hotel downtown, one of Lucian's properties, apparently paid for in advance. He handed her a key card and a phone number. If you need anything, he said quietly. Then he left without another word. Vivian stood in the anonymous hotel room, staring at her reflection in the mirror, still wearing the professional suit, still looking competent and strong. But inside, she was hollow. Her father had orchestrated a shooting. Ethan might die. And Lucian blamed her for all of it. Maybe he was right. Vivian's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You should have stayed out of it. Now people you care about are getting hurt. Want it to stop? Come home. Make this right. It wasn't signed. Didn't need to be. Her father was giving her one last chance. Vivian stared at the message for a long time. Then she made the choice that would either destroy her or save everyone she had left. She texted back a single word. Where? The response came within minutes. Peninsula Hotel. Presidential suite. Come alone. 1 hour. Vivian stared at the message until the screen blurred. Her father was playing chess with human lives, and she was being summoned like a piece to be moved back into position. She should tell someone. Rachel, David, someone who could help. But Ethan was in surgery because of her. Lucian had shattered because of her. And her father's message was clear. Come alone, or more people die. Vivian changed out of the blood-stained suit into jeans and a black sweater. Simple. Forgettable. She pulled her hair into a ponytail and stared at herself in the mirror one last time. The woman looking back wasn't the scared bride who'd sat on cathedral steps 3 days ago. This woman had burned bridges, destroyed empires, and kissed a dangerous man who now wanted nothing to do with her. This woman was done being afraid. Vivian pocketed the hotel keycard, grabbed her phone, and walked out. The lobby was mostly empty, just a few tourists and business travelers who didn't look twice at her. She caught a rideshare outside, gave the driver the peninsula's address, and watched Miami slide past the windows like a fever dream. Her phone buzzed. A text from the number Jin had given her. Jin, where are you going? So Lucian was still having her followed. Even furious, even bleeding, he was still protecting her, or monitoring her. Vivian ignored the text. The Peninsula Hotel rose like a monument to old money. Marble columns, doormen in uniforms. The kind of place where deals worth millions happened over cocktails. Vivian walked through the lobby with her head high, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. The elevator to the presidential floor required a key card. Vivian's stomach dropped. She didn't have access. But then a man in an expensive suit stepped into the elevator, glanced at her, and swiped his card without a word. One of her father's people. Of course. The ride-up felt endless. Vivian counted her breaths, tried to steady her racing pulse, and reminded herself why she was doing this. Not for her father. Not for the merger. For Ethan. For Mrs. Kwan. For everyone who'd gotten hurt because she'd chosen to fight back. The elevator opened directly into the suite. Her father stood by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, scotch in hand, looking like he'd aged 10 years and 3 days. Antonio Torres sat on a leather sofa, flanked by 2 security guards who looked ex-military. And in the corner, watching everything with predatory focus, stood Marcus Chen, the man who'd tried to kidnap her from Lucian's estate. Vivian's hands clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. Vivian, her father said without turning around. You came. You didn't give me a choice. We always have choices, sweetheart. You just keep making the wrong ones. Like choosing not to marry a cheater? Vivian stepped further into the suite. Or exposing your blackmail payments to Antonio? Which wrong choice are we talking about? Richard finally turned. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened. He looked like a man watching his empire crumble in real time. You have no idea what you've done, he said quietly. I know exactly what I've done. I ended your corruption, your lies, everything you built on Ethan Vale's destroyed life. Antonio stood smoothly. Speaking of the Vale family, I understand young Ethan had an unfortunate accident this evening. The words were casual, meaningless. But the threat underneath was clear. Vivian's breath caught. "You shot him." "I didn't shoot anyone," Antonio said pleasantly. "But Miami's a dangerous city, especially for people who make enemies in the wrong circles." "You son of a bitch!" "Careful," Marcus Chen cut in. His voice was flat, professional. "You're here because we're offering you a deal, not because we need you." Vivian forced herself to stay calm. "What deal?" Her father set down his scotch. "You recant everything. Tell the press you were emotionally unstable. That Lucien Vale manipulated you into making false accusations. You publicly apologize to Damien and agree to couples counseling. In 6 months, you have a quiet wedding. The merger goes through as planned. And in exchange?" Vivian's voice was ice. "In exchange, we don't hurt anyone else you care about," Antonio said simply. "The Vale family walks away intact. Mrs. Kwan stays safe. And you get to keep pretending you're a good person who protects the people she loves." The trap closed around Vivian like a fist. They knew. They knew exactly which pressure points to hit. "You're insane if you think I'm going back to Damien." "Damien's not part of this deal," Richard interrupted. "Frankly, after what you exposed this morning, he's more liability than asset. Antonio and I have already dissolved our partnership with him. So this is just about saving yourselves. This is about damage control." Her father's voice was hard. "The FBI is already asking questions. The SEC's opening an investigation. Every news outlet in the country is running stories about corruption in Miami's construction industry. You lit a fire, Vivian. Now help us put it out, or everyone burns." "Everyone should burn," Vivian said quietly. "You destroyed an innocent man's life. You took bribes. You committed fraud. You shot someone tonight because they got in your way. Why would I help you escape consequences?" "Because you're not a killer," Richard said. "Because despite everything, you still have a conscience. And that conscience won't let you watch more people die just to prove a point." He was right. God help her. He was right. Vivian's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. Jin. "Hospital. Ethan's out of surgery. Critical, but stable. Lucian's still here. Relief crashed through her so hard her knees almost buckled. Ethan was alive. Hurt, but alive." Her father saw her expression change. "Good news?" Vivian pocketed the phone without answering. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "I'm going to walk out of here. I'm going to cooperate with every federal investigation, and I'm going to make sure both of you spend the rest of your lives in prison." Antonio laughed. "With what evidence?" "Everything you release tonight is circumstantial at best. Emails can be doctored, financial records can be explained. You have nothing concrete." "I have testimony. Witnesses. Ethan Vale can testify about how he was framed. Ethan Vale is a convicted felon with a history of mental health issues," Richard interrupted. "No jury will believe him over us. We're respected businessmen. You're just a bitter ex-fiancé having a breakdown." "I'm not having a breakdown. Aren't you?" Her father stepped closer. "You ran away from your wedding, moved in with a known criminal, made wild accusations against your own family. From the outside, Vivian, you look completely unstable. And that's the story we're going to tell, unless you agree to our terms." Marcus Chen moved subtly, positioning himself between Vivian and the door. Not threatening, just blocking. Vivian's pulse spiked. She'd walked into this suite thinking she was in control, but her father had been playing this game for 30 years. He knew exactly how to trap her. "I need time to think," she said. "You have 60 seconds, Antonio replied. "After that, we make a phone call, and someone else you care about has an accident. Maybe Mrs. Kwan. Maybe one of those lawyers helping you. Maybe Lucien himself. You wouldn't... We just shot his brother, Ms. Mercer. What makes you think we'd hesitate to finish the job?" The room spun. Vivian grabbed the back of a chair for support. This was it. The moment where all her choices converged into a single impossible decision. Surrender and let her father win. Or refuse and watch everyone she cared about die. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out with shaking hands. "Unknown number? Don't trust them. They're recording everything you say. Get out now." Vivian's blood went cold. She glanced around the suite with new eyes. There, in the corner, a small device on the bookshelf. Could be a camera, could be nothing, but someone was watching. Someone who knew she was here. Well, Richard demanded, what's it going to be, Vivian? Your pride or their lives? Vivian looked at her father. This man who'd raised her, who'd taught her to ride a bike and helped with homework and told her she could be anything she wanted. This man who'd sold her for profit and orchestrated violence and was now threatening to kill the only people who'd ever truly protected her. I have an answer, Vivian said quietly. Good. Smart girl. Go to hell. She threw her phone at the window. The glass shattered in a spectacular explosion, and in the chaos that followed, Vivian ran. Marcus Chen moved fast, but Vivian was faster. She ducked under his reaching arm, grabbed a lamp, and swung it into his knee. He went down with a curse. The security guards lunged, but Vivian was already at the elevator, slamming her hand on the button. The doors opened immediately. Jin stood inside, gun drawn. Get in, he said calmly. Vivian didn't hesitate. She dove into the elevator. Jin fired twice over her head, warning shots that sent everyone in the suite scrambling for cover. The doors closed. The elevator dropped. How did you... Vivian gasped. Mr. Vale had me follow you. Good thing. Jin's expression was neutral, but his hands were rock steady on the gun. That suite was wired for recording. They were building a case against you. Coercion, maybe. Or worse. Who texted me? I did. Hacked into a burner to keep it untraceable. The elevator hit the lobby. Jin grabbed Vivian's arm and pulled her toward a service exit, moving fast and efficient through the hotel's back corridors. Behind them, Vivian could hear shouting, running footsteps. They burst into an alley where an SUV waited, engine running. Jin shoved Vivian into the back seat and peeled out before she even got the door closed. Where are we going? Vivian asked, heart hammering. Safe house. Different one. Mr. Vale's orders. Lucien sent you? Jin's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Mr. Vale is many things, Miss Mercer, but he doesn't abandon people, even when he's angry. Something tight in Vivian's chest loosened fractionally. They drove for 20 minutes, taking a deliberately convoluted route through Miami's side streets. The safe house turned out to be a waterfront condo in Key Biscayne, all concrete and bulletproof glass. Rachel was already there, along with David and Marcus Hall. They looked exhausted and wired, running on coffee and determination. Thank God, Rachel said when Vivian walked in. We've been trying to reach you for an hour. What the hell were you thinking, meeting your father alone? I was thinking I could end this without anyone else getting hurt. And how'd that work out? David asked, not unkindly. They tried to blackmail me into recanting everything, said if I didn't, they'd kill everyone I care about. Vivian collapsed onto a sofa. They shot Ethan as a warning. They were recording our conversation to use against me, and they're planning more violence if I don't fall in line. Marcus swore creatively. That's conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation. Add it to the pile. Problem is proving it, Rachel said. Unless you got them to confess on tape. I didn't. Vivian's voice was hollow. I broke a window and ran. Actually, Jin said from the doorway, you did get them on tape. Everyone turned. Jin held up a small device, no bigger than a button. Audio recorder. I put it in your jacket pocket when you weren't looking. It's been transmitting everything to an encrypted server. Vivian's mouth fell open. You bugged me? You? Mr. Vale's orders. He doesn't trust your father. Thought we might need insurance. Jin handed the device to Marcus. Everything's recorded, including the part where they admitted to shooting Ethan and threatened more violence. Marcus's smile was predatory. Oh, this is beautiful. This is admissible evidence, direct confession. We've got them. Send it to the FBI immediately, Rachel ordered, and make copies, multiple backups. If anything happens to us, this evidence still gets out. David was already on his phone. I'm calling my contact at the Bureau. We need federal protection for all of us. If Antonio and Richard are willing to commit murder, they won't get the chance, a voice said from the hallway. Everyone turned. Lucien stood in the doorway, still wearing the blood-stained shirt from earlier, eyes hollow and furious. Lucien, Vivian breathed. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her at all. He walked straight to Marcus Hall. Where's the recording? He demanded. Marcus handed it over. Lucien listened for 30 seconds, his expression getting darker with each passing moment, then pocketed the device. Send copies to the FBI, SEC, and every major news outlet, he said flatly. I want this everywhere by morning. I want them arrested before they can run." "Already on it," Rachel confirmed. Lucien finally looked at Vivian. His eyes were cold, controlled. Nothing like the man who'd kissed her 2 nights ago. "You went alone," he said quietly. "After everything, after Ethan, you walked into a trap alone." "I was trying to protect—" "I don't care." His voice was flat. "You could have been killed, kidnapped, used against everyone trying to help you. Do you have any idea how monumentally stupid that was? I was trying to end this. You can't end this." Lucien's control finally cracked. "This isn't some business negotiation you can solve by being brave and self-sacrificing. These are killers, Vivian. They shot my brother. They threatened everyone in this room. And you thought you could just walk in there and what? Talk them down? I had to try. Why? Why did you have to try? Why couldn't you just let us handle it? Why do you always have to—" He stopped, jaw clenched, hands fisted at his sides. The room had gone silent. Everyone was very carefully not looking at them. "How's Ethan?" Vivian asked quietly. The question seemed to drain the fight out of Lucien. His shoulders sagged. "Alive. Out of surgery. They removed the bullet, stopped the bleeding. He's going to recover." Lucien's voice was rough. "But it was close. Too close." "I'm sorry. Sorry." "Stop apologizing." He finally met her eyes, and the pain there was staggering. "Just stop. I can't keep doing this. Worrying about you, trying to protect you from your own recklessness. It's killing me." "Then let me fight my own battles," Vivian said, standing. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. I'm not. I survived Damien. I survived my father. I'll survive this too. At what cost?" Lucien's voice dropped to something raw. "How many people have to bleed before you realize you're not invincible? I never said I was invincible, but I'm also not going to hide while everyone else fights my battles. That's not what I'm asking." "Then what are you asking?" Vivian's voice rose. "Because one minute you're telling me I'm strong enough to handle this, and the next you're furious that I tried to handle it. Which is it, Lucien? Am I your equal or your responsibility?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Lucien stared at her, expression shifting through a dozen emotions too fast to track. Then he turned and walked toward the window, putting distance between them. "Both," he said finally. "You're both, and I don't know how to reconcile that." Rachel cleared her throat. "Maybe we should give you two some privacy." "No," Lucien said. "We have work to do. The recording Jin got is good, but it's not enough. We need more. Something that connects all the pieces, the blackmail, the shooting, the original frame job on Ethan. We need ironclad evidence that destroys them completely." "I might have something," Marcus Hall said slowly. He pulled up files on his laptop. "I've been digging through Antonio's communications. Found something interesting. 3 years ago, right before Ethan's arrest, Antonio made a payment to a police detective named Rodriguez. $50,000. Listed as consulting fees." Lucien turned sharply. "Rodriguez was the lead detective on Ethan's case." "Exactly. And look at this. Rodriguez retired 6 months after the trial, moved to the Cayman Islands, living very comfortably on a detective's pension." Marcus pulled up more files. "Except it's not just the pension. He's been receiving monthly deposits from an offshore account. Same account that Antonio uses for his blackmail payments." "So Rodriguez was paid to frame Ethan," David said, "and Antonio's been paying him to stay quiet ever since." "Can we get Rodriguez to flip?" Rachel asked. "If he testifies that he was paid to plant evidence, he won't," Lucien said flatly. "Men like Rodriguez don't flip. They're too deep, too compromised." "Then we need the account records," Vivian said. "Proof of the payments, something that doesn't rely on testimony." Marcus grinned. "Already got them. Bank records, wire transfers, everything. It's all here." "Then we have it," Rachel breathed. "We have everything. The frame job, the blackmail, the shooting. All of it documented and provable." Jin's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then looked at Lucien with an expression that made Vivian's stomach drop. "What?" Lucien demanded. "Hospital security just reported suspicious activity. 3 men tried to access the ICU where Ethan's staying. They were stopped, but they're still in the area." Lucien's face went white, then red. "They're going after him again," he said quietly. even with federal evidence mounting. They're trying to eliminate witnesses. We need to move him, David said. Get him into federal protection? No time. Lucian was already moving toward the door. Jin, get a team to the hospital now. Full security detail. Nobody gets near Ethan without clearance. Rachel, send everything we have to the FBI and demand immediate arrests. Marcus, coordinate with hospital security. I want eyes on every entrance. What are you going to do? Vivian asked. Lucien stopped in the doorway. When he looked back, his expression was carved from ice. I'm going to end this, he said, once and for all. Then he was gone. Vivian ran after him, catching him at the elevator. Lucien, wait! Go back inside, Vivian. Not until you tell me what you're planning. The elevator arrived. Lucien stepped in. Vivian followed. I'm planning to do what I should have done 3 years ago, Lucien said as the doors closed. I'm going to make Antonio Torres and your father pay for everything they've done, permanently. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about justice. That's not justice, that's revenge. It's both. Lucien's voice cracked. They shot my brother Vivian. They threatened to kill everyone I care about. They've destroyed lives and bought their way out of consequences for years. So yes, I'm going to end them. And I don't need your permission or your approval. The elevator hit the parking garage. Lucien strode toward an SUV where Jin was waiting. Vivian grabbed his arm. If you do this, you become just like them, she said desperately. You become a killer. Is that what you want? Lucien turned to face her fully. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the barely controlled rage, the deep well of pain he'd been carrying for years. I've already killed people, Vivian, he said quietly. I've done things that would make you run screaming. I'm not a good man. I never was. And pretending otherwise because you kissed me doesn't change reality. I don't think you're a good man because we kissed, Vivian shot back. I think you're a good man because you saved me when you didn't have to, because you protected your family, because you built something legitimate out of a criminal empire, because you're capable of more than violence. Maybe I was. Lucien pulled free from her grip. But they crossed a line when they shot Ethan, and now I'm crossing one too. He climbed into the SUV. Vivian made a split-second decision and climbed in after him. What are you doing? Lucien demanded. Coming with you. Like hell you are. You don't get to decide that. If you're going to burn your life down, I'm not letting you do it alone. Vivian, drive, Jin, Vivian said firmly. Jin looked at Lucien. Lucien stared at Vivian with an expression caught between fury and something that looked dangerously close to hope. Fine, he said finally, but you stay in the car, no matter what happens. We'll see. Jin drove. They headed downtown toward the building where Antonio Torres kept his private office. Lucien was on the phone the entire time, speaking rapid Korean to people Vivian couldn't see, coordinating something that sounded complex and violent. They're still at this peninsula, he said, hanging up. Antonio, Richard, and Marcus Chen. Hold up in the suite. Security's been doubled. They know we're coming. Then it's a trap, Vivian said. Probably. Lucien checked his gun with mechanical precision. But they made a mistake. They went after my family. That makes this personal. Lucien, please, think about this. I have thought about it. For 3 years, I've thought about nothing else. His voice was cold. I played by the rules, built legitimate businesses, tried to move past the violence, and they still came after me, still tried to destroy everything I built. So now I'm done playing by rules that only apply to people like me. The SUV pulled up to a high-rise building. Lucien's building, Vivian realized. He'd brought them to his own territory. 15th floor, Lucien said to Jin. Service elevator, you know the drill. They rode up in tense silence. When the doors opened, they were in a hallway Vivian didn't recognize. Industrial, utilitarian, clearly not meant for public access. Lucien led them to an unmarked door. Inside was an office that looked like a command center, monitors showing security feeds, communications equipment, and a table covered in weapons. Jesus, Vivian breathed. This is where I run the parts of my business that aren't legitimate, Lucien said bluntly. Welcome to the real me, Vivian. Still think I'm worth saving? Before Vivian could answer, one of the monitors beeped. Lucien moved to it, studied the feed, and his expression went deadly calm. They're moving, he said, Antonio's people just left the peninsula. 3 SUVs, heavily armed, heading toward the hospital. They're going after Ethan again, Vivian realized. Yes, but they're not going to make it. Lucien made a call. Intercept at 5th and Brickell. Box them in. Non-lethal if possible, but I don't care if it gets messy. He hung up and turned to another monitor, pulling up what looked like police radio frequencies. What are you doing? Vivian asked. Calling in every favor I have. By the time Antonio's people reach that intersection, there will be cops, feds, and private security waiting. They're going to get arrested or killed. Either way, they're not touching my brother. Vivian watched the monitors as Lucien's plan unfolded in real time. 3 SUVs moving through Miami. Lucien's people moving to intercept. And then, police cars. Dozens of them. Converging from multiple directions. The SUVs tried to run. Failed. Got boxed in at an intersection exactly where Lucien predicted. Gunfire erupted. Vivian's breath caught as she watched the chaos unfold on screen. Muzzle flashes, people running, cops taking cover. It lasted maybe 90 seconds. Then silence. Lucien's phone rang. Talk to me, he answered. Listened. Good. Make sure they're all identified and processed. I want names and charges by morning. He hung up. They're in custody. All of them. And Antonio, Vivian asked, still at the peninsula, probably watching the same thing we are and realizing he just lost his muscle. Lucien's smile was sharp. Now he's vulnerable. So we go there, Vivian said. We confront him, end this face to face. We don't do anything. I go there. You stay here where it's safe. Lucien. No. His voice cracked like a whip. I am not bringing you into a confrontation with men who've already tried to kill you once tonight. I am not risking you dying because you're too stubborn to stay out of the line of fire. You want to help? Stay here. Stay alive. Let me finish this. And what happens when you finish it? Vivian challenged. You kill Antonio? My father? Marcus Chen? Then what? You go to prison? Spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder? Then at least you'll be safe, Lucien said quietly. And Ethan will be safe. And everyone I've ever cared about will be safe. That's worth it. Not to me. Vivian stepped closer. I didn't fight my way out of Damien's control just to watch you throw your life away for revenge. You said I'm your equal, so treat me like one. Let me stand beside you when you face them. Lucien stared at her. Something shifted in his expression, the cold control cracking to reveal the man underneath. You're going to get yourself killed, he said roughly. Maybe, but I'd rather die fighting than live knowing I hid while you burned yourself down. Vivian held his gaze. We end this together, Lucien, or we don't end it at all. For a long moment, Lucien said nothing. Then he reached out and cupped her face with one hand, thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a gesture so gentle it hurt. You're insane, he whispered. So are you. If anything happens to you, it won't. We've got evidence. We've got witnesses. We've got the law on our side now. Vivian covered his hand with hers. We don't need violence. We just need them to face consequences. Lucien's jaw tightened. You're asking me to let them live. I'm asking you to let justice work. Real justice. Not just revenge. He pulled away, turning back to the monitors. For a terrible moment, Vivian thought he was going to refuse, going to walk out and do this alone. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Rachel, get the FBI to the Peninsula Hotel, Presidential Suite. Antonio Torres, Richard Mercer, and Marcus Chen are there. Tell them we have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. I want them arrested tonight. He hung up and looked at Vivian. Happy? Getting there. They might run before the FBI arrives. Then we make sure they don't. Vivian moved to the weapons table, picked up something that looked less lethal than a gun. What's this? Taser. 50,000 volts. Drops someone instantly. Lucien's expression was unreadable. You really want to do this? Yes. You understand that if this goes wrong, if they're armed, if they fight back, someone's going to get hurt. I understand. Lucien studied her for another long moment. Then he handed her a vest. Bulletproof. Put it on. Vivian did, feeling the weight settle over her chest like armor. Jin appeared in the doorway. FBI's 10 minutes out, but there's movement at the peninsula. Someone just left through the service entrance. Lucien pulled up the security feed. On screen, Vivian could see a figure moving fast through the hotel's back corridors. Her father. He's running, she said quietly. He won't get far. Lucien was already moving toward the door. Jin, take the south exit. Box him in. I want him contained until the FBI arrives. They moved fast, down the service elevator, through the parking garage, into the SUV. Jin drove like he was racing death itself, weaving through late-night Miami traffic. Where's he going? Vivian asked, watching the GPS tracker on Lucien's phone. Looks like the marina. Probably has a boat there, standard escape route for people with offshore accounts. Lucien's voice was grim. But we've got eyes on every dock. He's not getting out of the city. The marina came into view, boats bobbing in dark water, security lights casting long shadows. Jin pulled up fast, and they were out of the SUV before it fully stopped. Vivian spotted her father immediately, running down the dock toward a sleek yacht at the far end, briefcase in hand. "Dad!" she shouted. Richard spun. When he saw Vivian, his expression shifted from panic to calculation. "Vivian, thank God, we need to go. Now, before Antonio realizes I'm gone." "You're not going anywhere," Lucien said, stepping up beside Vivian. "FBI's on their way. It's over." Richard's face hardened. "You don't understand. Antonio's planning something. He's going to kill everyone who can testify against him, including you, sweetheart. I'm trying to save you." "By running?" Vivian's voice shook. "By abandoning everyone to save yourself?" "I'm your father. You stopped being my father the moment you sold me to Damien." The words ripped out of Vivian like a scream. "You destroyed Ethan. You took bribes. You orchestrated violence. And now you want me to believe you're running because you care about me?" "I've always cared about you." "You cared about profit," Vivian was crying now, years of buried rage pouring out. "I was never your daughter. I was an asset, something to be leveraged and traded and controlled. You never loved me. You loved what I could do for your business." Richard's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the father Vivian remembered from childhood. Tired, fallible, human. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Vivian. I never meant for it to go this far. I got in too deep with Antonio. He had evidence. He was bleeding me dry. I thought the merger would fix everything, give me enough leverage to... To what?" Vivian's voice broke. "To escape consequences? To profit off my suffering?" "To protect you." Richard's composure finally shattered. "He threatened you, Vivian. Said if I didn't deliver the merger, he'd hurt you, make it look like an accident. I was trying to keep you safe." "By selling me to his partner's son?" Vivian laughed bitterly. "That's not protection, Dad. That's cowardice." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Richard looked toward the yacht, back at Vivian. His hand moved toward his jacket. Lucien's gun was out instantly. "Don't." "I'm not armed," Richard said tiredly. He pulled out an envelope, held it toward Vivian. "Everything's in here. Account numbers, passwords, evidence Antonio doesn't know I kept. Take it, use it, destroy him." Vivian didn't move. "Take it!" Richard's voice cracked. "Please, let me do one thing right. One thing that actually protects you." Slowly, Vivian walked forward and took the envelope. "Thank you," Richard breathed. Then he looked at Lucien. "Take care of her. Better than I did." Before anyone could react, Richard turned and ran toward the yacht. "Stop!" Lucien shouted. Richard didn't stop. He reached the yacht, jumped aboard, and disappeared below deck. The engine roared to life. "He's running," Jin said, already moving back toward the SUV. But Vivian stood frozen, watching her father's yacht pull away from the dock, watching him choose escape over accountability. Over her, FBI vehicles poured into the marina, black SUVs with lights flashing. Agents swarmed the dock, weapons drawn. One of them ran up to Lucien. "And where is he?" Lucien pointed toward the retreating yacht. "Richard Mercer, just fled. You've got coastal patrol?" "Already dispatched. He won't make it past the channel." And he didn't. 300 yards from the dock, Coast Guard vessels appeared from both sides. boxing the yacht in with spotlights and bullhorns demanding surrender. Richard's yacht slowed, stopped. Vivian watched from the dock as her father was brought back in handcuffs, looking smaller and older than she'd ever seen him. When they led him past her, he stopped. "I'm sorry," he said again, "for all of it." Vivian wanted to scream at him, wanted to rage, wanted to demand answers for every lie, every betrayal, every moment he'd chosen money over his daughter. Instead, she said nothing, just watched as FBI agents led him away. It wasn't until they were gone that Vivian realized she was shaking. The envelope crumpled in her fist, the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down like gravity. Lucian's hand found her shoulder, steady, grounding. "It's done," he said quietly. "The FBI has Antonio and Marcus at the peninsula. They have your father. It's over." Vivian turned to face him. "Ethan, still safe. Rachel confirmed hospital security's been tripled. Nobody's getting near him. And the evidence? Everything's been turned over. FBI, SEC, state prosecutors. They have enough to put all three of them away for decades." Vivian should have felt relief, victory, something. Instead, she just felt hollow. "I need to see Ethan," she said. Lucien nodded. "Jin will drive us." Kids. The hospital was a fortress. Armed guards at every entrance. Federal agents in the hallways. Vivian had to show ID 3 times before they'd let her near the ICU. Ethan looked smaller in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and IV lines. But his eyes were open, alert. Mrs. Kwan sat beside him, holding his hand and murmuring something in Korean that sounded like a prayer. When Lucian walked in, Ethan's face broke into a tired smile. "Hey," he said, voice rough. "Heard you started a war while I was napping." Lucian moved to the bedside. For a moment he just stood there, staring at his brother like he couldn't quite believe he was alive. Then he reached out and gripped Ethan's shoulder with a gentleness that made Vivian's throat tight. "You scared the hell out of me," Lucian said quietly. "Sorry, wasn't planning on getting shot." Ethan's eyes found Vivian, but I'm guessing it was worth it. "You took them down?" "We took them down," Vivian confirmed. "All of them. My father, Antonio, Marcus Chen, they're all in federal custody." "Good." Ethan winced, shifting slightly. "And the frame job? The evidence against me?" "Exposed. Rodriguez is being investigated. We have everything." Lucian's voice was rough with emotion. "You're going to be cleared, Ethan, completely. Your record expunged, your reputation restored." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. 3 years, he whispered. 3 years I've been living with everyone thinking I'm a criminal." "Not anymore," Vivian said softly. "Now they'll know the truth." Mrs. Kwan was crying openly. Lucian looked like he was barely holding it together, and Vivian stood in the corner of the ICU room, watching this family she'd accidentally become part of, and felt something shift inside her chest. She'd lost her father tonight, lost the last fragile connection to the life she'd known, but she'd gained something else, something harder to name but infinitely more valuable, a future, built on truth instead of lies. The hospital intercom crackled. "Code blue, ICU floor. Code blue." Alarms started blaring. Medical staff ran past the room. Vivian's pulse spiked. "What's happening?" she asked. A nurse appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Everyone out, now. We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" Lucian demanded. "Bomb threat. Someone called it in. We're evacuating the entire floor." Vivian's blood went cold. She looked at Lucien. His expression had gone from relieved to lethal in seconds. "They're not done," he said quietly. "Antonio's people. They're making one last play." "We need to move Ethan," Mrs. Kwan said urgently. Medical staff were already unhooking monitors. 2 orderlies appeared with a gurney. Within 60 seconds, they had Ethan mobile and moving toward the stairwell. The evacuation was chaos, patients, staff, visitors all flooding the corridors. Vivian stuck close to Lucien as they navigated the crush of bodies. They were almost to the stairwell when Vivian saw him. Marcus Chen, standing at the far end of the hallway, dressed as a hospital orderly, gun in hand, partially concealed by his body. And he was looking directly at Ethan. "Lucien!" Vivian screamed. Everything happened at once. Marcus raised the gun. Lucien shoved Vivian behind him and drew his own weapon. Security guards appeared from nowhere. People scattered, screaming. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. But it wasn't Marcus who fired. It was Jin. Marcus went down hard, gun clattering across the floor. Blood bloomed across his shoulder. Security swarmed him instantly. Lucien had his gun trained on Marcus, expression deadly calm. "That was your last mistake." Marcus laughed through the pain. "You think this is over? Antonio has contingencies. He has people you don't even know about. This war doesn't end until one of you is dead." "Then I guess you picked the wrong side," Lucien said coldly. Federal agents arrived, taking Marcus into custody and securing the scene. The bomb threat turned out to be a diversion. No device was found, but the message was clear. Even in custody, Antonio Torres was still dangerous, and this war wasn't over yet. Marcus Chen was dragged away in handcuffs, blood trailing across the hospital floor like evidence of a war that refused to end. Federal agents swarmed the ICU floor, weapons drawn, clearing rooms with military efficiency. The bomb threat had been a diversion, a desperate play to create chaos and get one clean shot at Ethan. It had failed, but barely. Vivian stood against the wall, watching medics treat Jin's minor shoulder injury from the recoil of his shot, and felt the weight of everything that had happened settle over her like concrete. 4 days ago, she'd been sitting on cathedral steps in a ruined wedding dress. Now she was standing in a hospital corridor while federal agents cataloged evidence of attempted murder. How had her life become this? Lucien was on the phone, voice clipped and furious, coordinating with someone about increased security. Mrs. Kwan sat beside Ethan's gurney, refusing to leave his side even as medical staff tried to move him to a secure room. And Ethan, pale, exhausted, but alive, kept making dark jokes about having the worst week of his life. "Twice," he said, as they wheeled him into a private room with armed guards at the door. "They tried to kill me twice in one day. That's got to be some kind of record." "Not funny," Lucien said flatly. "Little bit funny." Not even a little. But there was relief underneath Lucien's anger. Raw, desperate relief that his brother was still breathing. Once Ethan was settled and Mrs. Kwan had stationed herself like a sentry by his bedside, Lucien pulled Vivian into the hallway. "We need to talk," he said quietly. They found an empty conference room, sterile, impersonal, nothing like the blood-soaked chaos they'd just left. Lucien closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking exhausted beyond measure. "Antonio's playing endgame," he said. "Marcus wasn't acting alone. Someone got him hospital credentials, got him past security, gave him inside information about where Ethan would be. That means Antonio still has people on the outside coordinating attacks. Even though he's in federal custody? Especially because he's in federal custody. He knows he's going down, so he's burning everything on the way out, taking out witnesses, destroying evidence, making sure if he falls, everyone falls with him." Vivian's stomach turned. "What do we do?" "We end it." Lucien's voice was flat. "Completely. No half measures, no mercy." "Lucien, I know what you're going to say. Let the law handle it. Trust the system. But the system almost got my brother killed tonight, twice. So forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly trusting right now." Vivian stepped closer. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to visit Antonio in federal holding, personally, and make him understand that if he comes after my family again, there won't be enough left of him to prosecute." "That's not... You can't just walk into federal holding and threaten a prisoner." "Watch me." Lucien pushed off the door. "I have connections, favors I can call in. By morning, I'll have 30 minutes alone with Antonio Torres. And when I'm done, he'll know exactly what happens to people who shoot my brother." "And then what? You go to prison for witness intimidation? Assault? How does that help anyone?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "It helps me sleep at night knowing he's terrified." "No," Vivian said firmly. "It keeps you trapped in the same cycle of violence that's been destroying you for 3 years. You said it yourself. You built something legitimate. You walked away from the criminal empire. Don't throw that away now just because you're angry." "I'm not angry," Lucien said quietly. "I'm homicidal. There's a difference." "Lucien, stop." He held up a hand. "I appreciate what you're trying to do. I do. But you don't get to tell me how to protect my family. Not after tonight. The words hit like a slap. Vivian stepped back, throat tight. You're right, she said quietly. I don't get to tell you anything. I'm just the person who brought this war to your doorstep, the person whose father helped destroy your brother, the person who— Don't! Lucian's voice cracked. Don't do that. Don't make yourself the villain here. Aren't I? Vivian's eyes burned. Ethan got shot because of me. Mrs. Kwan got hurt because of me. You're about to throw away everything you've built because of me. How am I not the villain? Lucian stared at her, then unexpectedly he laughed, bitter and exhausted. You really don't see it, do you? He crossed the room until he was standing directly in front of her. You're not the villain, Vivian. You're the reason any of this is getting fixed. Without you, Antonio would still be blackmailing your father. Damien would still be stealing from his own company. And my brother would still be living with a criminal record he didn't deserve. But the cost was always going to be high. That's what happens when you fight corruption. It fights back. Lucien's hand came up, cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. But we're still standing, and they're in custody. That's a win, even if it doesn't feel like one. Vivian closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I'm so tired. I know. I don't know how to do this. How to keep fighting when it feels like the fighting never stops. You do what I do, Lucian said quietly. You find something worth protecting, and you hold on to it until your hands bleed. Vivian opened her eyes. What are you holding on to? His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Right now? You. The confession hung in the air between them, raw, honest, terrifying. Before Vivian could respond, Lucian's phone buzzed. He pulled back, checking the screen, and his expression shifted. Rachel, he said, answering. Talk to me. Vivian watched his face go from tired to alert to something close to shocked. When? He demanded. How? A pause. Jesus. Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. What happened? Vivian asked. Antonio Torres just tried to hang himself in his cell. The federal holding facility was a concrete fortress designed to contain Miami's most dangerous criminals. Vivian had never been inside a place like this. All reinforced doors and security checkpoints and the kind of institutional despair that clung to everything like smoke. Rachel met them in the lobby, looking exhausted and wired. He's alive, she said immediately. Guards found him in time. He's in medical right now, under supervision. Was it a real attempt or theater? Lucian asked. Hard to say. He used a bedsheet, had it around his neck, but the knot wasn't particularly effective. Could be genuine despair, could be a play for sympathy or a medical transfer. Or a distraction, Vivian said quietly. Both Rachel and Lucian looked at her. Think about it, Vivian continued. Antonio's been one step ahead this entire time. He orchestrated the blackmail, the frame job, the shooting. He's not the type to just give up. What if this is another diversion? Get everyone focused on him while something else happens. Lucian pulled out his phone immediately. Jin, status update on Ethan. He listened, then relaxed fractionally. Good. Don't move. I don't care if the hospital's on fire, you stay with him. He hung up and looked at Rachel. What about my father and Marcus Chen? Richard Mercer's in a different facility. Separate wing, maximum security. Marcus Chen's in medical getting his shoulder treated, but he's cuffed to the bed with 2 guards. So everyone's accounted for, Vivian said. Then maybe it was real. Maybe Antonio actually tried to kill himself. Or maybe he's sending a message, Lucian said darkly, showing us he'd rather die than cooperate, which means he's still protecting someone. Rachel's expression sharpened. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Antonio didn't build his empire alone. He has partners, silent investors, people with enough power and money to stay hidden while he takes the fall. Lucian started pacing. And if he dies, either by suicide or convenient accident, those people stay protected. So we need him alive, Vivian said. We need him talking, Lucian corrected, and scared enough to give up his partners rather than protect them. He's not going to talk to federal prosecutors, Rachel said. He's already lawyered up with the best defense team money can buy. They'll drag this out for years. Then he needs motivation, Lucian said quietly. Something that makes cooperation more appealing than silence. The way he said it made Vivian's stomach clench. Lucian, you can't. I can, he interrupted, and I will. Rachel, can you get me 5 minutes with him? Absolutely not. He's in medical custody. No visitors except his attorneys. Then bribe someone. Call in favors. I don't care what it takes. Lucian's voice was steel. I need 5 minutes alone with Antonio Torres, tonight. Rachel looked at Vivian. Talk him out of this. I can't, Vivian said quietly. Once he makes up his mind, then unmake it. Rachel's professionalism cracked. If Lucien threatens a federal prisoner, he goes to jail. Everything we've built, all the evidence we've gathered, it gets thrown out because of intimidation and coercion. We lose Vivian completely. She's right, Vivian said, turning to Lucien. You can't do this. Watch me. Lucien, please. No. His voice was final. I have spent 3 years watching my brother suffer, watching my family hurt, playing by rules that only benefit people like Antonio. And I'm done. So either help me or get out of my way. He walked toward the security checkpoint. Vivian ran after him, grabbing his arm. If you do this, you become exactly what they say you are, a criminal, a thug, someone who uses violence to solve problems. Lucien turned to face her. His eyes were dark, empty of everything except cold determination. I've always been that person, Vivian. You just didn't want to see it. He pulled free and kept walking. Vivian watched him disappear through the security doors and felt something inside her chest crack open. She'd been so certain she could save him, pull him back from the edge, prove that there was another way. But maybe there wasn't. Maybe some people were too broken by violence to ever find peace. Rachel stood beside her, equally helpless. He's going to destroy everything. I know. We should stop him. How? Vivian's voice was hollow. He's right. The system failed. Antonio's people tried to kill Ethan twice tonight. Maybe violence is the only language they understand. That's not justice. Justice is a luxury for people who haven't been shot at. Vivian turned to Rachel. I don't like it either, but I understand why he's doing it. Rachel's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, then went pale. What? Vivian demanded. That was the prosecutor's office. They just got a call from Richard Mercer's attorney. Your father wants to cooperate. Full immunity deal in exchange for testimony against Antonio Torres and everyone involved in the conspiracy. Vivian's breath stopped. He's flipping. Completely. Names, dates, financial records, everything. He's giving them the entire network. Rachel's eyes were wide. This is it, Vivian. This is how we win. Not with violence, with testimony. Does Lucien know? Not yet. He's already through security. Vivian made a split-second decision. Get him back. Now. Before he does something he can't take back. Rachel was already moving, phone to her ear, speaking rapidly to someone with access. Vivian followed her through the security checkpoint, flashing credentials that probably shouldn't have worked but did anyway. They found Lucien in a holding area outside the medical wing, arguing with a guard about access. Lucien! Vivian shouted. He turned, expression thunderous. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Vivian crossed to him, grabbed his arm. My father's cooperating. He's giving the prosecutors everything. We don't need you to threaten Antonio. We already have what we need to destroy him. Lucien stared at her. Your father's testifying? Full immunity deal. He's naming names, exposing the network, all of it. Vivian's grip tightened. We won, Lucien. We actually won. But only if you don't screw it up by assaulting a federal prisoner. For a long moment, Lucien said nothing. Then the tension in his shoulders eased fractionally. Your father's really flipping? Completely, Rachel confirmed, appearing beside them. I just got the preliminary witness list. Richard Mercer's testimony will implicate at least 7 other people in the conspiracy, including 2 city councilmen and a state senator. Lucien closed his eyes, breathed. When he opened them again, the homicidal rage had been replaced by exhaustion. So it's over, he said quietly. It's over, Vivian confirmed. And I don't get to beat the shit out of Antonio Torres. No, but you also don't go to prison. I'd call that a win. Lucien laughed, rough and broken. You really think your father's testimony will be enough? Combined with everything else we have? The financial records, the emails, Marcus Chen's confession, the recording from tonight? Rachel nodded. It's ironclad. Antonio's going away for decades, minimum. And Richard? Vivian asked quietly. What happens to him? Rachel's expression softened. With the immunity deal? Probably witness protection, new identity. He'll testify, then disappear. Vivian nodded slowly. It was more than her father deserved, but it was also closure, a way to end this without more violence. Can I see him? She asked. Before he disappears? Rachel hesitated. I can ask. But Vivian, are you sure you want to? No, Vivian admitted. But I need to. They allowed her 15 minutes. Richard Mercer sat in an interview room, looking smaller than Vivian had ever seen him. Handcuffed, defeated. The powerful businessman who'd once controlled her entire life reduced to a man waiting to betray his partners for survival. When Vivian walked in, his face crumpled. Vivian, thank God. He started to stand. The guard pushed him back down. Vivian took the chair across from him, didn't speak, just looked at this man who'd raised her and wondered if she'd ever really known him at all. I'm so sorry, Richard said, voice breaking. For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything. He swallowed hard. I destroyed your life, destroyed Ethan's life. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but I was just protecting myself. And I'm sorry. Are you? Vivian's voice was flat. Or are you just sorry you got caught? Richard flinched. Both, probably. I don't know anymore. I just want you to know that I never meant for anyone to get hurt. When Antonio first approached me about the waterfront contracts, it seemed like a legitimate business deal. But then he had evidence of some financial irregularities, and he threatened to expose them unless I cooperated. So you helped him frame Ethan? Yes. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. God help me. Yes. And then I spent 3 years paying him to keep quiet. Every month, watching my accounts bleed dry, knowing what I'd done, and too cowardly to confess. And me? Vivian asked. The engagement to Damien? Was that real or just another business transaction? It was... Richard stopped. Started again. It started as business. A way to merge the families, consolidate power, maybe give me enough leverage to get out from under Antonio's blackmail. But I genuinely thought Damien cared about you. I thought it would be good for you. He was sleeping with my sister. I know. I found out 6 months ago. And I should have ended it then, should have protected you. But I was so deep in the corruption, so desperate to save the merger, that I convinced myself it didn't matter, that you'd be fine, that business was more important than your happiness. Tears streamed down Richard's face. He didn't bother wiping them away. I failed you, he said simply. As a father, as a human being, I failed you. And I'm sorry. Vivian sat in silence, feeling the weight of his confession settle over her. Part of her wanted to rage, to scream at him for every lie, every betrayal, every moment he'd chosen money over her, but mostly she just felt tired. I don't forgive you, she said quietly. I don't know if I ever will. But I understand why you're testifying, and I hope it helps you sleep at night, knowing you finally did one thing right. Richard nodded, fresh tears spilling. Will you be okay after this? I don't know, Vivian admitted, but I'll figure it out, without you, without any of this. She stood. Goodbye, Dad. Vivian, wait. But she was already walking toward the door. I love you, Richard called after her. I know I have no right to say it. I know I don't deserve to, but I love you. I always have. Vivian stopped in the doorway. Didn't turn around. I know, she said softly. That's what makes it hurt so much. Then she walked out and didn't look back. The next 3 weeks were a blur of depositions, court appearances, and media circuses. Richard Mercer's testimony blew the case wide open. He named names, exposed decades of corruption, implicated powerful people who'd thought themselves untouchable. Antonio Torres was charged with racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation, and about 15 other felonies. His bail was denied, his assets frozen, his empire dismantled piece by piece. Marcus Chen was charged as an accessory to attempted murder. He took a plea deal and agreed to testify against Antonio in exchange for a reduced sentence. Damian Torres, the man whose betrayal had started everything, was charged with fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. His father disowned him publicly. His reputation destroyed completely. And Cassidy, Vivian's sister, called exactly once. Vivian didn't answer. Through it all, Lucien was there. Not smothering, not controlling, just present. A steady hand on her shoulder during depositions. A quiet presence in courtrooms. Someone who understood that healing wasn't linear and forgiveness wasn't mandatory. Ethan recovered slowly. The bullet had done damage, but nothing permanent. He spent his days in physical therapy and his nights working with lawyers to get his record expunged. The evidence of his frame job had been so thoroughly exposed that the state was talking about formal exoneration and financial compensation. "I'm going back to school," Ethan announced one evening over dinner at the estate. "Finish my degree. Maybe study law. Someone's got to defend people like me who get screwed by the system." Mrs. Kwan beamed. Lucien looked quietly proud. And Vivian, sitting at that table, surrounded by people who'd become something close to family, felt like maybe she was finally learning what home actually meant. But she couldn't stay, not permanently. Not when she still didn't know who she was outside of the war they'd fought. She told Lucien on a quiet night 2 months after Antonio's arrest. They were on the terrace overlooking Biscayne Bay, the same place where everything had started to shift between them. "I need to leave Miami," she said quietly. Lucien didn't react, just took a drink of his scotch and watched the water. "For how long?" he asked. "I don't know. A few months. Maybe longer." Vivian turned to face him. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not running from something, or fighting something, or being defined by someone else's expectations." "Where will you go?" "I have some money saved, enough to travel, maybe Europe, maybe Asia. Somewhere I've never been, somewhere nobody knows my name or my history." Lucien was quiet for a long time. Then he set down his glass and looked at her. "I could come with you." "No?" Vivian's voice was gentle but firm. "You have Ethan, Mrs. Kwan, a business to run, a life to rebuild. And I need to do this alone." "You don't have to be alone." "Yes, I do." Vivian stepped closer. "Everything that's happened to me in the past 2 months, I've been reacting, surviving, fighting, but I've never just existed. I need to figure out what that feels like." Lucien's jaw tightened. "And if you figure it out and decide you don't want to come back, then I don't come back." Vivian's eyes burned. "But Lucien, I need you to understand. This isn't about you. It's not about us. It's about me finally choosing something for myself that isn't a reaction to trauma." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, sad and understanding. "You're right," he said quietly, "and I hate it. But you're right." "I'm not saying goodbye forever," Vivian said. "I'm just saying, not right now." "When do you leave?" 2 weeks. Lucien nodded. "Then we have 2 weeks. Okay." Those 2 weeks were bittersweet. They didn't talk about the future. Didn't make promises neither of them could keep. Just existed in the present, sharing meals, taking walks along the bay, learning each other without the weight of violence hanging over them. Lucien showed her parts of Miami she'd never seen. Quiet neighborhoods far from downtown. Art galleries in Wynwood. A tiny Cuban restaurant where the owner hugged him like family and slipped extra pastries onto their plates. "You're more human than you pretend to be," Vivian observed over café con leche. "Don't tell anyone," Lucien replied. "It'll ruin my reputation." They laughed, and for those 2 weeks, the darkness that had consumed both their lives seemed to recede just enough to let in light. On Vivian's last night in Miami, Lucien took her to the beach. Not South Beach with its neon and tourists, a quiet stretch of sand in Key Biscayne where the city lights couldn't reach and the Atlantic stretched dark and endless before them. They sat in silence, watching waves crash against the shore, feeling the salt wind tangle their hair. "I'm going to miss you," Lucien said finally. "I'm going to miss you too. Will you come back?" Vivian turned to look at him. "Honestly? Always. I don't know. Part of me wants to promise I will. But I learned the hard way that making promises I'm not sure I can keep just leads to more pain. Lucian nodded slowly. Then I'll settle for hoping. Hoping's good, Vivian said softly. I can do hoping. He reached out and took her hand. They sat like that until dawn broke across the water. Two people who'd saved each other from drowning, but were still learning how to breathe. Vivian left on a Tuesday morning. 1 suitcase, a passport, and enough money to last 6 months if she was careful. Ethan hugged her at the airport, whispered that she'd always have family in Miami if she needed it. Mrs. Kwan pressed a package of homemade food into her hands and told her to eat properly. Rachel and David had already said their goodbyes. Professional and warm and genuinely hopeful, she'd find whatever she was looking for. Lucian walked her to security. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, surrounded by rushing travelers and departure announcements, trying to figure out how to say goodbye to someone who'd changed everything. Thank you, Vivian said finally, for stopping that night, for everything after. Thank you for trusting me, Lucian replied, even when you probably shouldn't have. Vivian laughed. Especially then. She started to turn towards security. Lucian caught her hand. Vivian? She looked back. If you figure yourself out and decide you want something permanent... He paused. I'll be here. Vivian's throat tightened. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. I'll remember that. Then she walked through security without looking back, because if she looked back, she might not leave, and leaving was the only way forward. 6 months later. Vivian stood on a hillside in Tuscany, watching sunset paint the vineyards gold and thinking about how strange life could be. She'd spent the first month in Paris, learning to be anonymous in a city of millions. Then Barcelona, where she'd picked up bits of Spanish and worked in a cafe for pocket money. Then Florence, where she'd fallen in love with art and architecture and the way light moved across ancient stone. Now Tuscany. Wine country. Rolling hills and small villages where the loudest sound was church bells and birdsong. She'd rented a cottage on the edge of a vineyard. The owner had been looking for someone to help with harvest season, and Vivian had said yes without thinking. The work was hard, physical, grounding in a way she'd never experienced. At night, she wrote, not for publication, just for herself, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The girl who'd sat on cathedral steps felt like a stranger now. Someone Vivian had once been but would never be again. Her phone rang. Lucian's name flashed on the screen. They'd talked sporadically over the past 6 months. Brief texts. The occasional call. Enough to know each other was alive, not enough to feel obligated. Vivian answered. Hey, she said. Hey. His voice was warm, familiar. How's Italy? Beautiful, quiet. Everything Miami isn't. Good. You sound happy. I am. Mostly. Vivian paused. How's Ethan? Finishing his first semester of law school, top of his class. Already insufferable about it. Vivian smiled. And Mrs. Kwan? Still running my life, still making sure I eat vegetables. There was a pause. We miss you. You too. Enough to come home? The question hung in the air. Not pushy, not demanding, just honest. I don't know if Miami's home anymore, Vivian said quietly, but I've been thinking, maybe I'm ready to find out what is. What does that mean? Vivian looked out at the vineyard stretching before her, the cottage she'd been living in, the life she'd been building one quiet day at a time. It means I'm not running anymore, she said. I'm not fighting, I'm not reacting, I'm just existing. And it turns out I'm pretty good at that. I never doubted it. And I think, Vivian took a breath, I think I'm ready to exist somewhere with people who matter, if they're still interested. She could hear Lucian smile through the phone. They're interested. Even after 6 months of radio silence? Especially after 6 months. It means when you come back, it's because you want to, not because you need to. I do want to, Vivian said softly. But not to Miami. That city holds too many ghosts. Then where? Vivian looked at the sunset painting the hills in shades of gold and amber, thought about quiet mornings and honest work, and the kind of peace that only came from truly knowing yourself. What would you say to Tuscany? She asked. There's a vineyard here that's going up for sale. Small operation, needs a lot of work, but it has potential. You want to buy a vineyard? I want to build something, Vivian corrected. Something that isn't about revenge or survival or running from the past. Something real. Lucien was quiet for a moment, then, tell me about it. So Vivian did. She told him about the hills and the vines and the way the light moved across the valley. She told him about the cottage and the village and the people who'd welcomed her without asking questions. She told him about waking up each morning without fear, without obligation, without anything except the day ahead. And when she finished, Lucien said 5 words that changed everything. Send me the listing details. Wilsham. 3 months later, Vivian stood in the courtyard of the vineyard she now owned, watching a black SUV navigate the long gravel driveway. The vineyard had been a mess when she'd bought it. Overgrown vines, neglected equipment, a farmhouse that needed total renovation. But that was the point, building something from nothing, creating beauty out of ruins. The SUV stopped, doors opened. Lucien stepped out first, looking absurdly out of place in his expensive suit surrounded by rural Tuscany. Then Ethan, grinning like a kid on vacation. Then Mrs. Kwan, already surveying the property with the critical eye of someone planning improvements. You weren't kidding about the work needed, Lucien said, looking around. I told you it was a project. You said it had potential. You didn't mention it was basically a disaster. Vivian laughed. Where's your sense of adventure? I left it in Miami along with my common sense when I agreed to invest in an Italian vineyard. But he was smiling, actually smiling. Mrs. Kwan was already walking toward the farmhouse, muttering in Korean about structural damage and kitchen nightmares. Ethan jogged after her, phone out, probably already researching Italian renovation contractors. Lucien stayed in the courtyard with Vivian. So, he said, this is what peace looks like. This is what peace looks like for me, Vivian corrected. What about you? Can you really walk away from Miami, from everything you built? I'm not walking away. I'm expanding. Lucien gestured at the vineyard. Legitimate international business, wine distribution, corporate retreats. It's actually a smart investment. Is that the only reason you're here? Smart investment? Lucien stepped closer. You know it's not. Then say it. He took her hand. I'm here because 6 months ago you told me you needed to figure out who you were without me. And you did. You built a life. Found peace. Became someone stronger than the woman I pulled off those cathedral steps. And I realized I've been doing the same thing. Figuring out who I am when I'm not consumed by revenge. When I'm not defined by violence. When I'm just me. His grip tightened. Turns out I'm someone who wants to build a vineyard in Tuscany with a woman who's too stubborn to quit and too brave to stay scared. Vivian's eyes burned. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. It's also true. I know. She stepped closer. So what now? Now we build something, Lucien said simply. Together. No ghosts. No revenge. Just us and this ridiculous amount of land that needs work. Vivian laughed through tears. It's going to be hard. The work, I mean. Vineyards are brutal. Good. I like hard work. And we're going to fight. Probably a lot. I'm stubborn and you're controlling and we're both terrible at communication. Probably. Lucien pulled her closer. But we're also both really good at not giving up. True. So what do you say, Vivian Mercer? Want to start over? For real this time? Vivian looked around the vineyard. The neglected vines, the broken fences, the farmhouse that needed so much work, it was almost laughable. Then she looked at Lucien, this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly gentle man who'd saved her life and then set her free to find herself. I say yes, she whispered, to all of it. Lucien kissed her then. Not desperate like that first time in his foyer, not fierce like on the terrace, just soft and certain and real. When they finally broke apart, Mrs. Kwan was shouting something from the farmhouse about needing a new roof. Ethan was laughing, and the Tuscan sun was setting across the valley in shades of gold and amber. Vivian had spent 26 years being someone else's daughter, someone else's fiancée, someone else's asset. But standing in this vineyard, surrounded by ruins, she was going to transform into something beautiful, with people who'd become family in the strangest way possible. For the first time in her life, Vivian Mercer was exactly who she wanted to be. And that was enough. Tuck. 5 years later. The vineyard had transformed. Where overgrown chaos had once reigned, now neat rows of healthy vines stretched across the hillside, heavy with grapes ready for harvest. The farmhouse had been completely renovated, modern inside but maintaining its rustic Italian exterior. The courtyard where Vivian first greeted Lucian now featured a fountain and dining area where they hosted harvest celebrations for the village. Vale Vineyards had become something special. Not the biggest operation in Tuscany, but respected. Their wines had started winning awards. Their retreat center was booked solid with companies seeking peaceful settings for executive meetings. And every autumn, they opened their doors for a festival that drew people from across the region. Vivian stood in the vineyard at sunrise, checking the grapes, and felt the kind of contentment that only came from building something real. Her hands were calloused from work, her skin tanned from sun. Her Italian was fluent now. She'd become someone she barely recognized from those cathedral steps, and she loved her. "Mom, Nonno says breakfast's ready." Vivian turned to see a small figure racing through the vines, dark hair, bright eyes, her daughter Elena, at 4 years old and completely fearless. Behind her walked Lucien, carrying their 1-year-old son Marco on his shoulders. Both of them were laughing at something Marco had babbled. "Careful on the hill," Vivian called. Elena ignored her completely and kept running. Vivian caught her in a hug, spinning her around while Elena shrieked with delight. "Nonno made pancakes," Elena announced importantly. "The American kind, with chocolate chips." "Did he now? He says we're spoiled, but then he gives us extra." Vivian laughed. Ethan had joined them in Tuscany 2 years ago after finishing law school, claiming he needed a break before starting his career. That break had turned permanent when he'd met a local woman named Sophia and fallen completely in love. Now he lived in the village, practiced law part-time, and spent his mornings spoiling his niece and nephew. They walked back to the farmhouse together, Lucien and Vivian, Elena running ahead, Marco reaching for grapes from his perch on Lucian's shoulders. Inside the kitchen was chaos. Mrs. Kwan was indeed making pancakes while arguing in a mix of Korean and Italian with Sophia about the proper way to prepare them. Ethan sat at the table, coffee in hand, grinning at the domestic warfare. "Your family's insane," he said when Vivian walked in. Says the man who moved to Italy to avoid responsibility. "I moved to Italy for love." Same thing. They ate breakfast together, all of them crowded around the big farmhouse table. Elena chattered about her upcoming birthday. Marco threw food from his high chair. Mrs. Kwan fussed over everyone. And Vivian sat in the middle of it all, feeling overwhelmingly grateful. After breakfast, while the others cleaned up, Lucien and Vivian walked out to the terrace. Their terrace now. With a view of rolling vineyards instead of Biscayne Bay, but somehow just as perfect. "Do you ever miss it?" Lucien asked quietly. "Miami. The old life." Vivian thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the version of me who was brave enough to walk away from everything. But no, I don't miss the life. That was survival. This is living." "No regrets? About leaving Damien? Never. About exposing my father? Never. About running away to Italy and buying a broken vineyard?" She smiled. "Only on days when the tractor breaks down." Lucien laughed. He'd changed too over the past 5 years, still sharp, still dangerous when he needed to be, but softer around the edges, more willing to laugh, less haunted by the past. "I got an email yesterday," he said, from Rachel. Vivian looked up sharply. They'd stayed in contact with their lawyer team over the years, but rarely about anything serious. "What did she say?" "Antonio Torres died in prison. Heart attack. He was 63. Vivian processed that information slowly. The man who'd terrorized them, who'd shot Ethan, who'd built an empire on corruption and violence, dead. "How do you feel?" she asked. Lucien was quiet for a moment. "I thought I'd feel satisfied or vindicated, but mostly I just feel tired, like a chapter finally closed that should have closed years ago." "That's growth," Vivian said softly. "Or age." "Both, probably." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their children play in the courtyard below. Elena was teaching Marco to throw pebbles into the fountain. Mrs. Kwan was pretending to scold them while secretly encouraging it. "I never thanked you properly," Vivian said suddenly. "For what?" "For stopping that night on the cathedral steps. For giving me somewhere safe when I had nowhere to go. For," her voice caught, "for seeing me, really seeing me, when everyone else just saw a transaction." Lucien turned to face her fully. "You don't need to thank me for that." "Yes, I do. Because you changed my life, Lucien, completely. And I need you to know that I see it, I appreciate it, every single day." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead with the kind of tenderness that still surprised her after all these years. "You changed mine too," he said quietly. "I was drowning in revenge, consumed by violence. You showed me there was another way, a better way. We showed each other. Yeah, we did." Elena's voice rang out across the courtyard. "Mama, Papa, come see what Marco did." They went. Because that was their life now. Not running from violence or chasing revenge. Just existing in the small, perfect moments that made up a day. That evening, after the children were in bed and Mrs. Kwan had retired to her cottage on the property, Vivian and Lucien sat on the terrace one more time. "Do you think she's happy?" Vivian asked. "The woman I used to be. Do you think if she could see this life, she'd be happy?" Lucien considered the question seriously. "I think she'd be terrified. This life requires vulnerability, trust, opening yourself to the possibility of being hurt. But I think she'd also be proud, because you did the hardest thing possible. You survived the worst and still chose to build something beautiful." He took her hand. "That takes more courage than running, more strength than fighting back. It takes faith that the world can be better than the worst things that happen in it." Vivian squeezed his hand. "When did you get so wise?" "Probably around the time I bought a vineyard without knowing anything about wine." She laughed. And somewhere in the valley below, church bells rang, marking the hour, measuring time, reminding them that life moved forward whether you were ready or not. Vivian thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, broken, betrayed, sitting in the rain with her life shattered around her. She thought about everything that had happened since. The violence, the fear, the moment she'd chosen to fight back instead of surrender. And she thought about this vineyard, these people, this life built from ruins. The worst night of her life, abandoned on cold cathedral steps in a ruined wedding dress, had secretly been the beginning of everything beautiful, just like Lucien had promised on that first terrible night. Just like she'd finally learned to believe. The stars came out over Tuscany, the vines rustled in the evening breeze, and Vivian Mercer, no longer running, no longer fighting, just living, finally understood what peace felt like. It felt like home.